Yeah, look at you, compound here. You
Yes.
do this every morning at 7 a.m.
Every morning, 7 a.m.
So amazing.
Like the devil knows hell, I know Bobby well enough to tell you about his 67 smells, well enough to tell you he's hella swella fella.
Yeah,
That
that's
was one of
me.
that was one of my favorite superficial parts of a documentary that's far from superficial. Bob and the Monster. I watched that last night. Wow, 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 wow! Congratulations, dude, on being alive and living a full life
Well,
and
that's
contributing to society on such a high level and using your experience to give back.
well. Thanks. You know, there's a thing called the 27 Club. Are you familiar with this?
No, tell me.
Okay, it's all this, like people lived on the edge. They all died at 27. Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, but he was alive when I was thinking I was in the 27 Club. So once the mythology of sad and tragic death, whether it's Rimbaud or, you know, Jim Morrison, the people that follow have that history and that knowledge that, oh yeah, you burn out and die in a glorious death and everybody remembers you. And so I remember thinking I'm gonna die this year when I was 27, because you're just living, you're so high and you're so drunk and you're so narcissistic and you live in a bubble with no brown M&Ms.
Yeah.
And you just in the back of your mind, that reference is a joke that a friend of mine played on concert promoters. So, as Van Halen, this friend of mine's band, became bigger and bigger and bigger, that they just would play games about how far you could push the envelope of being a pretentious rock star. And so they put in a rider that there couldn't be any brown M&Ms in their dressing room. It was actually written in their rider, which is a list of things that the band needs to play a concert. And it was just a joke to see if anybody would do it. And they literally did it. That's how stupid the record music business is. So Van Halen puts this thing in their rider. It's a joke. No brown M&Ms in the dressing room. Eddie and David Lee don't like brown M&Ms, so you can't have any brown M&Ms around them. So the concert promoters would literally have some PA, some person that worked the concert, taking all the brown M&Ms out of an M&M jar. It was
Hey,
a joke. It was a joke. And
that's
people
awesome.
actually did it.
Let me ask you this really quick. I've heard two stars, and what the fuck do I know? I never leave my house in Santa Cruz, California. But two stories I've heard is like with Ellen and Ellen DeGeneres and Madonna. I both heard had things written that no one's allowed to make eye contact with them.
Yeah, I think people put that in there, but I always think, I don't know about Alan, but if Madonna put it in there, it's all about a sense of humor and trying to keep sane in a sane world. So you're trying to pull, we just got crazier and crazier just in things that we would do to it really, the boredom of touring to kind of occupy your interest, right? So we would do this thing in the morning where we all usually had breakfast in either a hotel or if you're traveling at some diner, truck stop. And we would put all the ingredients that were on the table, like salt, pepper, ketchup, Tabasco sauce, hot sauce, maybe some cigarette hashes back in the day when you could smoke in restaurants, and mix it all together in a cocktail and have it in a cup, and then everybody throw $20 bills down and see if anybody had the guts to, you drink it and you pick up the money. so so it's mostly, I think it's a sense of humor. I don't think it's as pretentious as it lives on in.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? It was just
Right.
something, you go insane. I mean, I luckily survived it all. I didn't become a part of the 27 Club, and years later, my manager was retiring and he said, hey, there's a bunch of boxes here. This is when I was sober in the late 90s. And he said, there's a bunch of boxes here. Do you want them? And I said, yeah, send them over to my house. And a bunch of boxes of my whole career came over to my house. And I went through it one day, and there was a tour list, one tour we did in, I think, 1990. It was 87 shows in 93 days.
Wow.
We played 87 concerts in 93 days. to put it into context, like, and we didn't play just for like an hour, we played for like 2 hours. So you're talking about you're addicted to heroin and alcohol, and you're emotionally just fried. You don't know who you are anymore. Everybody kisses your ass, and you're told you're the greatest thing since sliced bread constantly because all the people around you work for you, right? And you're an infant terrible is what I call it. Like, you're just a child, just living in an adult world where everything is catered to you. And you're playing 87 times in 93 days in different cities, in Chicago and Cleveland and New York and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and in Tampa, Florida. And you're just riding and driving and playing and sitting in hotel rooms, and you become insane. There's no doubt about it that you become insane. Like, not insane in a like, holdable way or put in a psych ward, but insane in that reality doesn't exist anymore. And I have a theory, actually it's a friend of mine, Paul's theory, but I definitely believe it. A lot of these deaths in the EDM movement, the Avicii suicide, there's been several of the younger DJs have killed themselves, died of drugs. It's also in the hip hop community, and we can talk about that. But specifically in the EDM community, which is electronic dance music, for those that don't know, they go from time zone to time zone. Like, Avicii would play 3 shows in 24 hours across the world. Wow. He'd play in Tokyo, then he'd get on his jet, he'd fly to Ibiza, play, then he'd go to London. And within 24 hours, he's played in 3 different time zones, 8 time zones apart. Your central nervous system and your psyche and your sense of self is not supposed to do that.
And 3 different cooks for his MDMA.
Yeah. I think he brought it along with him. But
3 different recipes.
But
is
that toll that no one else experiences, that I think that has a lot to do with the sanity of musicians. I mean, when you look at Taylor Swift, she's like a machine. She's like a robot. My friends and I are just in awe of her. Like, it's
her tour schedule. You're referencing
so
her life schedule.
Yeah, but yeah, and you're talking about in Brazil when the little fan died from heat exhaustion. You're talking about it's 110. I lived in Rio de Janeiro. It's like 110 degrees and 100% humidity. And Taylor Swift is playing for 2.5 hours, 3 nights and 5 days. So, and everybody has these, you see it in commercial airline pilots. You see a high rate of addiction. You see a high rate of addiction in nurses and doctors. Anywhere there's intense work over long periods of time, 12, 14 hours, 20 hours. And musicians' lives, my friend John from Warrant, his name is Janie Lane in real life. I was trying to get him to not tour and to stay home and just to like be sober. And he said, but I love playing. I told him, you don't need the money. And he goes, yeah, but I love playing. And he said, you know what, Bob? I don't think they pay us for the hour we play. I think they pay us for the 23 hours we do nothing but suffer.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And he had a lot of my friends that wrote hit songs or one hit song have it's like an albatross around their neck. I had one friend tell me he wished he never wrote it. And I was like, well, I wish I did. You could sign the publishing over to me. You know what I mean? So but
Bob, let me share with people just really quick, just to give them an idea. I watched a movie last night called Bob and the Monsters. It's a documentary about your life, incredible documentary. There's testimonials from Courtney Love, CEO of Capitol Records, singer from the Circle Jerks, Jane's Addiction, Fishbone, members of the Chili Peppers, including Flea and Anthony. Anthony says you're the best friend he's ever had. You took him in when he was homeless. There's him and Flea when they were homeless. You got lyrics in their songs. The Weirdos, you were the lead singer for Thelonious Monster and the writer, CEO of Epitaph Records, Butthole Surfers, Stone Temple Pilots, Guns N' Roses, Dr. Drew, and the list goes on and on. of people, guests who were in the movie, who talked about the wild life you lived. And at some point when you got sober is when I consider you got your PhD in life. You lived this really, really intense life, and you experienced the love of a tremendous family, the hardships that families go through, and then you became obsessed with music, and then you became obsessed with drugs, and now you're obsessed with helping people, and which you've also been equally successful at in all the organizations you've been a part of and started from you know, there's scenes of you setting up chairs and setting up buildings where people are going to get rehabilitation, to actually doing the counseling, to you know, being a star on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew. So I just wanted to lay that groundwork.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, maybe we didn't do a preamble. So I just see my
And that's
life
fine.
like,
We can get back into it now.
I see my life as I am constantly curious. I don't know why I was blessed with curiosity, but I'm constantly curious. I'm curious about apps. I was this morning obsessed with headsets. Like, it's just some people call it OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder, or personality disorder. I just think it's a passion for life and knowledge. You know, they label everything nowadays. Everything has got a label on it, right? But I was a you know, kind of an upper middle class kid. You know, post war, born in 1961 to a pretty successful family, and but
And you
I
were the
lived.
youngest child, loved on
Yeah,
by
yeah,
three sisters and a mom and a dad.
yeah, and yeah, and I could bask in the glory of my father's success, whereas my sisters kind of suffered along the rise, right? So then
Mhm.
I came along, you know, 12 years after my youngest sister, and but it was an isolated life because my dad had kind of semi-retired when I was born, and we lived in Palm Springs, and it was like there was only old people out there. And so I read books and I listened to music, and I had these older sisters that had the records of the day. Like I'm one of the few people. I was 12 years old when Ziggy Stardust by David Bowie come out. My sister bought it the week it came out. I listened to David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, the week it came out, and there's not many 12-year-olds did. I mean, people listen to it 30 years later, discovering this great thing. I remember when it happened, when you're listening to this visionary poet, amazing artist describe a world. It was just everything. It was just mesmerizing. And the Beach Boys, or I always talk about, like, Pet Sounds was a record my sister didn't really like because it didn't have a lot of hits. But for me, it just struck me, and I would listen to it with headphones in my room and just think, like, how do they do this? How is there I could tell there was so many instruments on it. You know what I mean? You're talking about, you know, at that time, it's such a small world with 3 television channels, and you know, basically just pop hits with singers and acoustic guitar. How did Brian Wilson do this thing? And so I became obsessed with it because I had nothing but time on my hands. We lived on a golf course that the only time things were really happening is on the weekends, when people would come down to golf and kids would come down to vacation. But during the weekdays, it was very desolate kind of world that I lived in. So records and books and movies and TV were like everything to me. So
This guy Troy Martin says Pet Sounds is great with mushrooms.
yeah, it's great with anything. You know, that's another thing I was going to tell you, all my nicknames. So I have a bunch of nicknames. I'm Robert O'Neill Forrest, my legal name. I'm Bob Forrest to most people. I'm Bobby Buckskin to a lot of my friends. And the buckskin term, everybody asks, like, what? Why are you Bobby Buckskin? And there are certain drugs that don't fit people. Like, my psyche doesn't fit pot.
Mm.
And but everyone I knew, Pete, our leader of our band, Pete White, smoked pot all the time. Dick's the guitar player, smoked pot. Anthony and Flea smoked pot all the time. So I was around pot all the time. And anytime I would just smoke a couple of hits of pot, I would just, like, it would do something to me, like a mushroom experience, like a hallucinatory experience. And I tended to like to take my clothes off, and I would just be naked you know, this is like in 1982, 83, you could kind of be naked back then. I don't think you can be naked now.
Well, in the state of Oregon, it's legal. It's even legal around kids in the state of Oregon. You're allowed to expose I was just reading yesterday, you're allowed to expose yourself to kids in the state of Oregon as long as you don't appear to be having sexual gratification from it.
Oh, wow. How did they recognize that? The police out there looking.
Fuck nuts.
So I take my clothes off, usually on a tour bus or something, and I just be naked, or sometimes, you know, around the house or at this pool at a hotel or something. And people didn't really object to it that much. People were so much more accepting of other people's trips as long as it didn't cause them any trouble, right?
Right.
And now everybody's so overly sensitive that somebody looking sideways at you causes them an emotion, so then you can't look sideways at people, right? And but it was a freer time, so everybody's buckskin, like buck naked. I started getting called Bobby Buckskin. Anthony till this day just calls me Bucky. But anyways, yeah, mushrooms, pot's hard for me. Mushrooms a little bit easier. You know, there's a traditional thing. The Eagles did it: go to Joshua Tree and take mushrooms and watch the sun come up. I've done that dozens of times. And you know what's strange about drug experiences is the first one is always the best. And then you're trying to repeat it, right? That's the problem of addicts. Like if you talk to most people, they've probably gone to Joshua Tree and taken mushrooms once or twice. I did it 36 times, and 34 times it was just nothing. It was just like, well, it's cold. What time is it? Is the sun coming up? Like,
right. When's this going to be over?
When are we driving back? I want to go get some heroin. And I lived in Joshua Tree. It is why it's a very dear, sacred place to me. But
how long did you live there?
About off and on about 5 years. When I was doing the TV show, I lived out there. That was a good thing because I was kind of isolated, because being on TV was nothing like TV fame was nothing like music fame. Like music fame is, you know, music fans that know of your band and your genre. TV is like everyone that, you know, they've either watched it or seen an episode or obsessed with it. And so that kind of fame I really had never experienced before. And then I started to have sympathy for people who you know, have that kind of fame from music, like your Chili Peppers or Nirvana or that kind of thing. Like I know kind of what they went through. I experienced it when I was like 43 years old. I remember I was at Walmart in Yucca Valley shopping, and people would just kind of follow you around. I was good about it. I would stop and say, I know, yeah, it's me and Dr. Drew. And then usually they just want a picture or whatever. And I had to go to the bathroom like number 2. And I was in the Walmart in Yucca Valley, go to the bathroom. And a guy was talking to me through the door while you're going to the bathroom.
Wow, that's like, I think Eminem has a song like that where he talks about someone who followed him into the bathroom while he's taking a shit.
Yeah. And it's just like, whoa, like, dude, I'll be out in a minute. Like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, you know, you have to guide people sometimes. I think our education system's lacking. Like, if somebody's in the bathroom, there's no way out. Just wait in the hallway. They're coming out. Like, you don't have to talk to them under the door of the toilet. But,
Bob, yesterday my well stopped working, and I can't get it fixed to this morning. I get my water from a well.
Yeah.
So this morning I had to go out in the front yard and take a shit. I just had to get
there
that off my chest.
That's
yeah.
perfect. I'm big on pooping. Like, I think poop is a very important thing.
I couldn't shit in the toilet because we don't have any water. I was like, all right, I guess I'm just going to go. The dog followed me out there. He's looking at me like, what are you doing?
Dude, I'm going to give you a little hint. So when I lived in Joshua Tree, I lived in a town called Pioneer Town. You know how when you live in a town, you say the most famous town that's around it because nobody knows where, you know, Santa Cruz is kind of famous. I used to love that pier there, the Santa Cruz Boardwalk.
Yeah,
but
I was
you
there
probably
a couple
don't
days
live
ago.
in Santa Cruz. You probably live in an outside hamlet town.
Yes,
and
I
you
do.
Say
yes,
you live
right.
in Santa Cruz because
yes.
that's what you do.
Yes.
So I lived in Pioneer Town, which we had well water too. I can give you a hint about that. Our problem wasn't pumping. The pump always worked and got it into the tank. The problem was the lines from the tank to the house would freeze, right? Because it's really cold up there. People think the desert, like, yeah, it's hot in the summer. It's fucking cold in the winter. So You can get a bucket, because I've had this experience where you
Oh,
can
I should have
get a
shit in a
bucket
bucket.
off the
Wow.
top of the big tank. You open it up on the top, get a bucket out, you pour it in the top of the toilet, and then you can, because here's the thing, Santa Cruz pretty cold in the winter, but not really like
Oh,
Pioneer
it was
Town. Like,
beautiful. I actually enjoyed it this morning. It
well,
was
that's a
nice.
good one. But if it's
Yeah,
32 degrees, you're not pooping outside. I learned
right.
this in the rural livings of Pioneer Town.
I could have just shit in the bucket and thrown it away, though. I should have done that. Or just
Yeah,
lay a piece of paper down, some paper towels down there and shit in the bucket and then walk over to the trash and dump it out. I didn't even think of that. I just shit in the lawn, on the front lawn.
right. So we're all conscious of bowel movements in my circle of friends. And sometimes when there's a good one, somebody will say, you got to see this. And Flea had one that just stood straight up out of the water. And it's like,
Wow.
he is the healthiest man on the face of the earth.
Bob helped me in Los Encinas in Pasadena with Dr. Drew. Bob is a great man.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's where I work too. So I would commute 100 miles every day from Joshua Tree to Los Encinas. I had it down pat. I had my pooping spot down pat too, 76 station at Rosemead and the 210 freeway. So
while you were driving in, you would always stop at that gas station?
Yeah, because I had to leave by 7:20, 7:25 to get to work. I had a 9 a.m. group and I lived 100 miles away. But it was mostly flowing traffic into LA. You know that LA, I know we make a joke about the Saturday Night Live thing. Like literally, it changes your life, the traffic. I think we have the third worst traffic in the United States behind New York and Chicago. Like, it changes your life. We all went, my whole family, I have 7 people in my family. It's kind of crazy. So we all went to see the Rolling Stones. Also, understand this, for 7 people to go to the Rolling Stones, it's not easy. So it's pretty expensive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we went to the Rolling Stones. It's at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood by the LAX airport. And I live in Claremont in the Inland Empire. And to go there right now would take an hour and 40 minutes because it's rush hour traffic on a weekday.
What year was that you went?
This is the other night.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I saw a football game the other day. I'd never seen a structure like SoFi Stadium. I couldn't even believe it.
Well, I had been there 2 times with our kids. One to see BTS, the great K-pop band, and once to see the Chili Peppers play. And my wife hadn't been there, and she walked in and she was just like, this is more like an airport than it is like a stadium. And
it was unbelievable.
It is like an airport. It is too big. And nobody knows where you're supposed to go.
Yeah. It's truly unbelievable. It's an architectural miracle. I was blown away.
Yeah, you're thinking like, what is holding that up if there's a 7.6 earthquake? I always think shit like that. But anyways.
And when the airplanes fly over, Bob, I was in there and a giant plane flew over and you looked and it's like you're in a movie set. You can't even believe it.
It's that close, right?
Yeah.
And the roof is glass or you can see through the roof.
Yeah.
But so it's about an hour and 40 right now. We got home in 37 minutes at 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday night. I mean, that was fast. And so you think about like Anthony, Flea lives in Beverly Hills. Anthony lives in Malibu. Like we don't see each other because it's impossible to see each other. So we see each other at Lakers games or go eat or at kids events or whatever. But it's really hard. And yet it's only if there's regular traffic, like in any other town, like in Santa Cruz, it's like 30 minutes to get to their house. But in real life LA, it's an hour and a half. You know what I mean? So it changes your friendships. It changes your work schedule. It changes your parenting. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to be able to work from home most of the time and be with my kids. But I have friends that live here. They don't get home until 8 o'clock at night. If they leave their work at 6:30 on the west side of LA, they don't get home till 8 o'clock at night. Sometimes their little ones are already asleep. They don't even see their kids, all week.
Do you homeschool your kids?
No, they go to different schools. I did during COVID. That's a whole long, interesting story. So one of the things about, I think, me and my friends, which is a song actually, we always question authority, And it's funny that in our lifetime, it's been this part of society that doesn't question authority at all. like it's strange to live. I feel like I'm a dinosaur living amongst the next generation that's just going to obey the computers. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And what recovery is, and what I preach, and what your caller or what your listener was talking about was, we're preaching freedom of choice, freedom for a bondage of self, freedom of drug addiction, freedom of materialism and attachment, freedom to appreciate the oak trees and to be grateful to be alive. And when you're a slave to technology and what other people say about you on the internet, you're incapable of being free. If you know what I mean. I try to teach my kids that. So during COVID, since I have an organization called Don't Die, I was very familiar with the CDC mortality listings, right? And I started looking at COVID deaths, and I started, because for one thing, when COVID first was hit, like in that March, Dr. Drew told me, with your liver problem, he's my private doctor or whatever. So he said, with your liver problems and your history of smoking, I don't know, you should stay home because I think this could be really bad for you. And when Dr. Drew tells you something could be really bad for you, you usually should listen, right? Because he's not, he's not usually overly dramatic about things. He goes, I don't know, we got to see more of what this thing is, but for you, you got to stay home. And when he said, with my liver and my smoking history, that I got to stay home, I took it literally. So then I was obsessed, like I am, and curious about the death rates. And you started to see the trends of who was dying, right? And it was tended to be older or unhealthier people, and no children. No, literally no children. More children. I know this is going to cause some trouble, and I don't want to cause trouble for you. If you object,
no, you can't listen. COVID's one of my favorite.
Listen,
COVID's one of my favorite subjects. I don't take any injections. My kids have never had a vaccine.
Okay.
I was out there like,
so,
fuck you. Like, I ain't doing it.
I just gotta know who I'm talking to.
Everyone in my by the way, the one good thing about this audience, I'll tell you, Bob, is the CrossFit audience is about personal accountability and personal responsibility.
Perfect.
And so we really try to walk that line.
Let me tell you why I opened my school and why the state of California came down on my head. So more children had been murdered by their parents than had died of COVID at a certain point.
Yeah.
I mean, I love facts that shock people.
Right.
More children have been murdered by their parents or a family or loved one or a known person than had died of COVID, yet the schools were closed.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck all you all. So we have a guest house on our property. I talked to some parents that were beside themselves. It changed everybody's lives. At a certain point, we had to go back to work, but our kids couldn't go back to school. It was insanity. So I opened a school thinking like, me and 5 or 6 of my punk rock brethren and sisterhood people will want their kids to be here. No masks, drop them off at my house. We hired 2 teachers. They were wearing masks. I just told everyone what I believe. If you want to wear a mask. And if you don't.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
We had 3 teachers. 2 teachers chose to wear masks. A third did not. Only one of the original 8 kids, the parent said, well, we'd feel better if you wore a mask. And I said, I get it. No problem. And I made sure that, that he wore his mask. And eventually they came to see that, he'd been here for months and most of it was outside. I believe in this thing called the Sudbury approach to learning, which is kids learn when they learn. Curious kids will learn faster. That's why you say those are good kids, because they're curious kids, and others need to be helped and made to be curious or made to understand that this is a valuable thing you want to teach them. So the Sudbury School. So a lot of it was outside. We have a creek in our property. There's like oak trees and trails all through here. There's bears. There's mountain lions. There's just a lot of fun stuff here. And slowly word of mouth got out. At a certain point, we had 2 tracks, 5 days a week. Kids were coming and going. Parents were dropping off. I live on a dirt road up in the mountains. Like, it was like Grand Central Station.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And it was all kinds of people. It was like uber liberals and conservative Trumpers and everybody. And it was this beautiful place where we were all kind of rallying together for our kids and not listening to the idiocracy of the state, right? Which is my theme and message my whole life. And one day, some woman came walking up the driveway. My mother-in-law was in the property out in front, and he said, "Is Robert Forrest here?" And my mother-in-law is from Iran, and she came running in and said, "I think the government is here." And sure enough,
did one of the parents turn you in? Did one of the parents turn you in?
No, a teacher that was going to be a fourth teacher that was going to be hired, and then we decided not to. People do what they got to do. Somebody had to call the state. You're exactly zeroing in on. I never get mad at people for acting fearfully or foolishly, because I do it, my friend. Everybody does it. When you're scared, you do dumb things. When you're resentful, you do dumb things. When you're filled with hate and rage, you do dumb things.
Right.
And so the goal is to be conscious of your hate, be conscious of your rage, figure it out yourself. And I learned this working in drug treatment. There are certain clients that would really piss you off, right? And they're either rude or entitled or oblivious to the consequences of their use on their families or whatever, denial, whatever triggers the therapist, right? And my triggers are people that don't take things seriously. Because I believe music is a serious thing. Without music, life shouldn't exist, wouldn't be tolerable. Art is important. Children are important. Politics is unimportant.
Oh, that's interesting. That's why people have issues with comedians, because they're when their jokes touch something that they take seriously,
they get really bent out of shape.
I like that model.
Yeah, so it's called transference and countertransference. So most people don't like entitled assholes, but since I am one, I don't have any problem with it.
Right.
So I had all the musicians and all the people didn't like or that were rude. And then my other staff members would have the people that didn't really seem to care, and you'd ask them why they're here. And that became the millennial generation. We're talking about 2000, 2004, 2005. The millennials start coming to rehab, and I just find their attitude shocking. Like, what are you passionate about? I don't know. You don't know what you're passionate about? What do you care about? I don't know. What kind of music do you like? Everything. Like, just this neutral nothingness. I saw it, and that irritated me. So I would give them to the other therapists, and then I had all the entitled, rude, argumentative, don't believe in God people. And this, I learned it through that. So when they told me I couldn't have a school or I had to close the school, I was like, we'll see about that. And at a certain point, the police would come here and take down the parents' license plate numbers. Like, you can't make this shit up. Wow. This happened to me. And I asked the sheriff, like, what are you going to do? It's a bunch of middle-class parents in Claremont. Are you going to arrest them for having their kids go to a school that doesn't wear masks?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was insane.
Hey.
Then the supervisor came out and said, you're not closing your school. You can't do this. And I said, I'm fucking doing it. And I was wanting them to arrest me, kind of to fight the righteous fight of how stupid this closing of the schools was, but they wouldn't. They just started fining me $180 a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they'll either get you one way or another.
Did they relinquish those fines eventually?
Yeah, I never paid them. So eventually I fought fire with fire. I started getting the media out here, KTLA and KTTV, to local news stories. And I was saying, yeah, it's just a bunch of kids. And I started educating the public about the low child death rate. There was literally, I don't even know that there's 1,000 kids died of COVID.
I honestly, I don't believe any kids died from COVID. I don't believe how they were categorized.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
categorize it,
yeah,
right.
right.
Yeah. But you can agree that a lot of 75-year-olds did.
Yeah, average age of death was 78 years old with
Yeah.
4 more comorbidities. People who are 30 years complicit in their death, sitting around smoking cigarettes, drinking Coca-Cola. Like, hey, that's your choice.
Yeah, that's a choice. Yeah, and see,
Yeah.
we don't like the consequence of our choices, which in addiction, and whether we call it addiction is even a subject for debate right now. And in a certain amount of the population seems overly anxious, sensitive, uh, obsessive, right? So there's a genetic basis for this, and there's actual historic basis for it. If you're attuned to the environment, like I hear things that other people don't hear, right? I see things like, whoa, what's going on? I just know. When I saw the lady from the state outside my front window, I knew who she was. I knew she thought the state had ultimate authority and she was a big shot. All she is a fucking bureaucrat who drives around in a state-owned vehicle tormenting people. And she likes it because she believes in the state. She was now about to meet somebody who doesn't believe in the state. Right? And so turned out I was right about her, but her supervisor didn't even like her. She was unfireable. That's another thing in California. Like, you can't fire a teacher, you can't fire a state employee, you can't fire anybody here. So you just have to tolerate their craziness, and that gets crazier and crazier. This woman was so rude. She probably could have gotten me to close the school to say, because at that point we had like 30 kids at my house all day long. I wasn't really crazy about it.
Right.
I just wanted my kids to be able to play with other kids. I didn't know I was starting a university. If she would have been nicer and more honest and more kind instead of a bureaucrat asshole from the state of California, I probably would have closed the school. Right? But she's she walked, just the way her gait of her walk was so repulsive to me. Like, she thought she owned my house. Right. Because she works for the state of California, District 4. Blah, 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 blah. So anyways, I knew from the attunement and being able to read people what I'm up against, and that triggered me. Like, okay, Bobby, here's your match.
Right.
And I thought, the state and the court level, I had to hire a lawyer, I had to hire somebody to help me try to license the thing. In the end, my wife and I were sitting here and we would spend all this money to like license a school, and she was like, "You sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "No, I don't want to do it. But this woman is driving me nuts." That's when you understand that your trauma, your stuff, is causing you to do something irrational and something you don't want to do. Right? Which, I like the idea of, like, we could pack up and leave at any time. If you're going to really start a school like we did in Los Angeles, in music school, me and my friends, it's a responsibility for the rest of our lives. Like, my drummer and co-founder of my band is at the school every day, like 5 days a week.
The school's still in existence.
No, there's another school that we started in the 90s. Flea and Anthony and Pete Weiss and Tree and people in my band, people in the Chili Peppers started music school because they cut music out of the LA Unified School District. And Flea had this idea, like, we should start a music school and then embarrass the LA Unified. And seemed like a good idea at the time. It led to a lifelong commitment to this education of kids in Los Angeles. You have like 800 students a year. And, yeah, go ahead,
Bob. I want to throw this in here real quick, because it's an idea I have. I know we're talking about something serious, but there's a company that you're involved with. I met you through Sarah Cox.
Yeah.
And they have a product called DNA for Addiction.
Right.
And I had this idea when Sarah was telling me about it. I thought it would be fun because I'm surrounded by people who just exercise, right?
Right.
And so one of the stars in our community is a guy named Taylor Self. And I thought it would be cool to make a little pilot show, just these little YouTube shows, 10-minute shows, where we send him the kit and
Mm-hmm.
he tests to see if where he is on the, I guess I'm not sure exactly how the tests work, but where he
lower moderate exposure risk.
okay.
Yeah.
So it checks your genetics to see if you're predisposed to have, I guess, an addictive personality or have addiction. And then he would send out the test, and then we would be on the show with him, right? And he'd be a little square in here too, and he'd open it up, and then we would talk about what his results were. And we could do this with all sorts of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like we could do it with
I
you,
want to do
we
it.
could do it with Taylor, and we could
Yeah.
just show the world, and then we could talk about why it's important to know ahead of time, whether you have little kids or whether you're an adult, why it's important to know if you're predisposed with the genetics. I know there's other factors too. You talk about them, but to be addicted. So that way you could be smart about if you get surgery, if you could even scare your kids into being like, hey, you're predisposed for addiction. And that could also get in their head so that maybe they don't smoke pot or they don't do cocaine or they don't go down the avenues of drinking.
But it'll help explain for a lot of people. I believe it's like 10 to 20% of the population has this in low and moderate ways.
Only 10 or 20, huh?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the numbers traditionally, alcoholism ran at about a 5% rate for 100 years, and it went to 10% when the drugs became part of the mainstream. And now, post-prescription drug epidemic, it's 20%. So it kind of maxes out at 1 out of 5.
Okay.
And I believe those people, if there wasn't heroin to be exposed to, they would be overly religious. There's all different ways to express this feeling of inadequacy that this genetic predisposition causes, right? So let's just talk about what is
that from your observation that the overly religious versus
that was the original thing. So when you see, there wasn't a genetic test until Sarah and this guy came up with it. Like there was ones at universities that cost tens of thousands of dollars to do, where they discovered at UCLA this consistent pattern in addicted populations that is in the attunement and light and sound, and where you interface with the world, that kind of places where this consistent pattern in the addicts that they tested, right? And we always knew that alcoholism, which was the original addiction, ran in families. So now you had evidence that there's a genetic component to it. But as science came on and more investigation you started to see that this doesn't always express itself in outwardly alcohol and drug consumption, drug use and addiction. Over religiosity, food, obviously, in America. And then it can be CrossFit. It can be, music, right? I believe there are constructive, healthy things to be addicted to. CrossFit is not the worst thing in the world to be addicted to.
Right.
Over fentanyl and heroin and food, I would prefer CrossFit.
Right.
And in my case, being obsessive about everything, being obsessed with music did me pretty well. I'm sitting here 50 years later.
Right. You're not dead.
I'm not dead, and I lived the greatest, most interesting life. I've been all over the world, never really had a job. For a guy like me, that's pretty good. So this addiction to music and Brian Wilson and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and Bob Dylan, this obsession with that led to me being a performer, an artist and songwriter, that's a good, healthy kind of addiction. The question is, can you detach? And most people can't. So you have
what does that mean, detach?
So a lot of people believe that addiction is an attachment disorder, that you can attach to something like CrossFit, become obsessed with it, do it, get your routine down, get your body healthy and fit, but you can never relax from that. You can never really enjoy the spoils of your hard work.
And I do hear about that. People who they go to sleep thinking about it. They wake up thinking about it. The community's
oh my God, that connects something for me. So I was
a
golfer. I grew up in Palm Springs. I played on the golf teams in high school and college. And I literally, what you're talking about, going to sleep at night, waking up in the morning, I would if I was playing a tournament the next day, I would go to sleep. Well, I would lay in bed before I went to sleep, going over each hole of the golf course I was about to play tomorrow.
Wow.
And where the pin might be. So there's the big thing about tournament golf is what is their pin placement like, and where you know yourself as a golfer and where it's best. And like if the pin is center of the green, you know, I'm going to be in trouble because I tend to hit the ball short and roll it up, and you hit the ball short on that hole, you're going to still not even be on the green. You know, like obsessive thinking, like, and then wake up in the morning with anxiety or complete confidence. It didn't really matter, just overwhelming feelings that you can't control, you can't remove yourself from, you can't relax from. That is addiction in a nutshell, that feeling of inability to detach. And eventually when you're lost on drugs, you just lose all sense of self, and it's only the attachment, that do it again, compulsion. And that's why drugs are unique, I think, to the addictive things, behaviors, because it just consumes you like quicksand, and then you don't even exist, and you're just inside the quicksand. I don't think you can really do that with CrossFit. I think obviously you can do that with food. I think obviously
shopping, right? Shopping.
Yeah, hoarding. I think these hoarding people have addictive disorder. You know what I mean? When you see the stuff they just bring home and pile in there, you know what I mean? Think of how obsessive that is.
In Bob and the Monsters, one of the characteristics you talk about is to kind of describe addiction. It says, you said you're fighting to live a shitty lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that hit me hard. I was like, wow, that is, I've seen those people. That's like all the people that they call homeless, who are really drug addicts. They're fighting to live this shitty lifestyle.
Yeah. And it's attachment. They can't let go of it. Right. It's such a hard thing to let go of, especially when it's got a hold of you. Right. So the initial thing is me wanting to attach to mushrooms and go to see or listen to Beach Boys and Joshua Tree. Eventually that has an attachment back to me that I can't escape. I have to have a drug experience today. I have to. It's built in. It's not an option to not. Right. And in that kind of comes hopelessness, because you feel hopeless. So the people on the streets, if you talk to them, because I tried for years to deal with some of the homeless population, just little by little. But also Dr. Drew and I would go down to downtown LA, and I went down there with Chelsea Handler, her name is. She did a TV show about my outreach down there. And it's so hard because it's letting go of drugs and hopelessness and try to embrace something unknown. Right? That's where the homeless population is.
What's the unknown? Sobriety?
The unknown is like, where am I going to live? What am I going to do?
Oh.
You know, facing all the fears and insecurities that caused you to be living by the river. Anyways, there was a river in Orange County. I don't know if you ever saw it, by Anaheim Stadium. Mm-hmm. There were 10,000 people living there. I went down there, and it was just like trying to talk to people, and it was tribal, and it was horrible. And yeah, homeless advocates saying, well, they have the right to do that. No, they're like raping women down there. Like, this is awful. You want to be a drunk woman living by the side of the Orange County River at 2:00 in the morning when there's other drunk predators there, high predators? Like, it was awful.
And the occupation
homeless advocates, like, I went to Echo Park Lake with Dr. Drew, and this one asshole kid, couldn't have been more than 28, 29. He's screaming at me, fuck you. These are my fucking neighbors. And I was like, then let him sleep on your couch, you fucking asshole. Right. I was going to punch the guy. The guy, you know, these entitled people that have never lived life, and they're going to tell us all how to live.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, I know we're in a nonviolent kind of mood right now, but, what the hell? You're screaming at me, aggressively at me. I'm just down here trying to help, you fucking asshole. And you're telling me these are your neighbors. Okay, you know what good neighbors do for each other? They help each other.
Correct.
They don't let them sleep in the fucking park and shit behind a tree. help them. If you're a good neighbor, let them sleep on your couch. Pick somebody that you click with and make an effort to really change this person's life. But don't sit here and scream at me and Dr. Drew for coming down here saying it's addiction mostly. I think it's mostly addiction and mental health issues. Definitely. Try saying that to a homeless advocate.
I know it's crazy. So you don't know. I was homeless for many years, and I tell the story of the 1,000 people that I met, and I just make that number up arbitrarily. But the 1,000 other homeless people I met, it was just me and one other guy in the 5 years that I was homeless who wasn't a drug addict. All 9, and so I always think it's a misnomer to call these people homeless. They've basically chosen the drug addiction, and when you're a drug addict, shelter is not a priority, and so it leaves kind of the list, right? Pussy and shelter and food kind of slip; those should be ahead of drugs, but they kind of slip behind drugs, and then your job becomes a criminal. So they were crooks, or they were running scams, or they were stealing bikes or whatever, and then to get their drugs, and that was their circle. So whenever people call them homeless, that's my trigger word. I'm like, wait a second, homeless has the implication that they chose that. They didn't choose that.
Well, and it also implies there's not enough homes. There's enough homes, but those people, like I when my older son, I have a 38-year-old son, when he kind of, I had an empty nest, I started letting drug addicts stay at my house, try to turn them around, try to clean them up.
I did that too. I opened my whole backyard to drug addicts. Yep.
And what I found was, the pull to drugs is so powerful, and that it outweighs their feelings of, I can't believe you're doing this for me. Because it always have a beginning, middle, and end. I'd say, hey, you want to stay at my house for a couple weeks and I'll help you and we'll detox you and you go to meetings with me and hang out with me. And they would be like, you would do that for me? And I was like, yeah. I'd always pick someone that was like a musician or somebody that was a friend of a friend. And the awe of what I was offering them would last a week, 5 days.
Okay.
And then inevitably it becomes, you're living in my house. You don't have to ask me if it's okay to go to the bathroom. You don't have to ask me if it's okay to walk to the market and all this kind of stuff. And then inevitably there would be a relapse somewhere along the line and hiding it from me. And right then, that's kind of unethical. We have an agreement. We have a contract. I'm going to try to help you get off drugs. If you want to take drugs, you just say, Bob, I can't do this. I got to head out. That's the honorable, ethical thing to do. But no one ever did that.
Right.
What they did was they take drugs and then try to lie about it.
Yeah.
Right. And
that stresses me out. That sounds stressful.
Inevitably, I would catch them and then I'd give them a second chance. And then I would say, there's not 3 strikes, you're out. There's 1 more strike and you're out. So we're either going to do this or not. Inevitably, they would do that second strike the next day.
Wow.
And then they'd be out. Right. And somehow a couple of times with some closer friends of mine, they would be like, I'm sorry, man. And they would just leave, but a lot of times it'd be very heated and like, you're just throwing me out. Like, no, your decisions have gotten it so that this is not going to work. Something else will work. Just head on out. I brought you into my home to fucking get off of drugs and turn your life around. It's not working. It doesn't mean it's something wrong with you or something wrong with me. It's just not working. You have to fucking leave. And sometimes it got a little rough to have people leave. Right. And inevitably I couldn't do it. It was just so much. It was so much.
Bob, what do you think the value is of knowing ahead of time if you're predisposed to addiction, like this test?
Well, I want to help people understand what it means.
It
means that you have to think really mindfully about how you live, right? And most people don't. We live in oblivion in this country constantly, right? So give me some food, give me some drugs. I can just go by my children. I tell my children, like, listen, the idea or the possibility that you end up with a really shitty life because you start smoking pot when you're 13. My son's 13. My middle son's 13 right now. Like, it's pretty high. So I'm not telling you what to do. The choice is yours. And then I give them tools of how to say no. This is something parents never think about. How to say no. Say, if somebody passes you a joint and or wants you to smoke pot or drink, just say, listen, my dad and my mom were really fucked up junkies. My dad was homeless for years and he almost died. And so like, I can't, and just how to say no. Right. Because kids don't know how to say no in peer pressure things when they're 12 and 13 and 14. They don't know. Right. And give them tools. Say, no, I'm good. It's just fucking me up. And I forget who it was. It was a musician guy that used to say, no, I've had enough. If somebody offered him a drink at a concert or something, he'd say, no, I've had enough. And they'd say, oh, okay, like that he was already drunk. But the fact is he hadn't drank in like 10 years. But that was a good send out. Like if some fan of yours is buying you a drink, you say, oh, no, I've already had enough. Thank you so much, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So a gracious way to get out of it, what to say when people are offering you drugs and alcohol. Right. That's important for parents to talk to their kids about. Not just say no, because you're a kid. You're going through adolescence and puberty and like, you don't know how to say no to a pretty boy or girl. You don't know how. You got to help them.
So the first tool you gave is like, hey, explain to them, hey, just so you know, most people who go down this pathway and take their first hit off a joint, it ends bad for them. So
his parents. You know what I mean? I'm giving them carte blanche to say anything you want about your parents.
Yeah.
Like we ended up heroin addicted and fucked up, so we can't.
What if you don't have parents? So like your kid can look at you now, Bob, and be like, oh, actually I do want to take the path of my dad. Look how happy he is. You know what I mean? Because they would tell you when you're a kid drugs are bad, and we all had the friends who would do acid,
I'm not saying drugs are bad. I never say drugs are bad.
Okay.
I say it's a decision you have to make, and here's some reasons why I think it's a risky decision and why it's a risky decision. Right? Your parents, you have a predisposition for it. You also have childhood trauma from being an addict. Let the cat in here. And my son's a musician, and pretty easily pot can take a real priority in your life. You were talking about priorities. The amygdala is where the drive center of the brain is. It's back in the back. That seems to be where addiction settles, the motivational system, right? So that is what you said: fight or flight, procreation, sex drive, safety, comfortability, all this like food, water, all the drives that you have that help us survive. And all of a sudden, pot goes in there. You need pot to survive. Mm-hmm. And then what happens over a long period of time, 3 to 5 years, is safety and shelter and food and eating and all the things that are priorities, and sex and procreation and that take a back seat as pot, and then cocaine or meth or fentanyl or heroin take the front seat. And then they're driving and you can't get the wheel back from them.
Yeah.
Right. And so that knowing, I think our test DNA for addiction is a tool for parents to talk about drugs, to talk about life and will and decisions and direction and purpose. I think half of America is lost because it has no purpose. That's why I think hatred became their purpose.
And they have no value. And people, I don't think it wasn't until my 40s, late 40s, that I understood what it meant to have values either. I don't think I think a lot of Americans don't have morals or values. They don't even understand what it means to have them. They
have tribal values that are manipulated, right? Yes. I'll give you an example. I grew up Republican, obviously. If anybody knows about Palm Springs and the affluent Southern California, I grew up Republican. This is not Republican. What is going on and posing as republicanism is not republicanism. Republicanism is stay out of your business. My dad used to always say, you can't legislate morality, right? You can't legislate morality. Think about that statement. all they're trying to do is legislate morality.
Mm.
Let people be. Just, we want to pay less taxes. You do what you do, I do what I do. You keep your money, I keep my money. Right? That was republicanism, Barry Goldwater, like my dad's God on earth. And I grew up, Ronald Reagan was a friend of my uncle's, and I met Ronald Reagan when he was governor, and George Murphy before him was Republican governor. And my family's kind of, in healthcare and supermarkets, so they kind of had some, influence on politics. And it was all Republicanism. And this is nothing to do with Republicans, not the Republican Party's platform for 80 years.
Do you think it's getting back to that way?
No? I think Trump blocks out the sun. Right? I think he just changes everything. We got a senile president because of Trump. He's the only guy that could beat Trump. Everything is about Trump, and Trump is not going to be here forever. You know what I mean? So give him 8 more years. I don't care. And then let's see what the country looks like after, because I think he's such a powerful lightning rod of all things in this country. And he is just a vessel of this rage that's down under. And this is what I don't understand. I'm not angry. I'm not. I get taxed like fucking crazy. I don't care, whatever. My kids are more important. My family and friends are more important. My employees are more important than sitting around being hateful and angry at whoever. And I also am, but I'm a businessman, and it's not, you don't want to pay 50% taxes for having homeless people drive you out of your hometown. You know what I mean? I understand the frustration. I don't understand the rage. It doesn't go to rage for me. It's just some bad policies we made, and they'll get corrected. And then on the other side, on the liberal side that I've been on most of my life, I'm not with all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, I had to run away from it. I'm born and raised Berkeley. I live in Santa Cruz, but ever since I had kids, my liberal and I started getting values, my liberal roots, I've completely distanced myself from them.
But my friends and I believe we've always been here, and the left moved way wacko, and the right became religious fanatics. Right? So it's just I'm still right here. I'm not that far away from a Republican, but I'm miles away from a uber liberal.
Right. That's what happened. I guess that's what happened to me too. The left moved so far left that now I'm closer to being conservative, significantly closer than being liberal. It's just like they just ran away.
I'll give you an example. My partners in business, I have a rehab center, so I don't know if you mentioned that. I have
Oro, correct?
Oro House, yeah.
Oro
there's 4 locations, and
by the way, thank you for that.
Oh yeah, and my partners are left and me, and we were floating the idea of this livable wage when it first started getting talked about by Andrew Yang and AOC, right? And so we ran the numbers, and we're not a greedy business. And if we had done that at that time, we would have lost about $1.8 million a year, right? And by running that, it gave us a real opportunity to think, well, that's the future. We got to figure out how you do that and pay a livable wage, right? Which and understand, this is all based on the bullshit real estate Ponzi scheme of America that's been going on for 50 years, right? That every house has to be worth 12% more next year. That's bullshit. It all comes tumbling down every 8 years, right? Nobody who... I always think of Dr. Conrad Murray, who was Michael Jackson's doctor. And he said when he found out he's dead and he was going to take the rap for it, he said, I'm just the last doctor standing. Right? There's 8 guys before me that were doing the same thing, but he died on my watch. I'm going to jail. In that Ponzi scheme.
Did he go to jail? Did he go to jail?
Yeah, he went to jail.
Okay.
And he was disbarred. Probably house arrest. But in this Ponzi scheme of real estate, it crashes every 8 years. And one person is held holding the bag, right? They're paying ridiculous, overly priced for a house that's not worth that, at a high interest rate, and it all comes crashing down on them. Meanwhile, 4 people that sold the house along the rise made money.
Right.
It's a scam. It's a Ponzi scam, right? And that's why it's unlivable in Southern California. I feel for our employees. Like, how do you work in Malibu? Where do you live? You can't live in Malibu.
Right.
You can't even live in what used to be an affordable town in Southern California, like Thousand Oaks or Camarillo. You can't fucking live there.
Same in the Bay Area. Same around San Jose, San Francisco. Yeah, Berkeley, Oakland. It's crazy.
You can't. So anyways, we kind of came up with a formula where we reconfigured our staffing in order to, everybody makes a livable wage, but everybody has a little bit more responsibility to pull the weight of how the system can work and at least break even. You know what I mean? You can't have a company that loses $1.8 million every year. Not for long, you can't.
Right.
Right. And I just think, like, yeah, we're attacking the problem at the wrong end. Even if we pay McDonald's employees $30 an hour, they're still not going to be able to live in Los Angeles.
Agreed.
We have to do something about, and not build more unaffordable housing and have it go to like, they love that. Politicians love that. You know, the only people I think about that are, you know, lower than politicians are lawyers, right? like the rating system, right? And so politicians go around saying, oh, we built 1,200 affordable housings. Yeah, well, you've got 150, 200, 300,000 people that need affordable housing, and you built 1,200 of them. How about we stop giving the tax incentives to all these slumlords? How about that? Why do they not do that? Do you know why? Because those slumlords donate money to their campaigns.
Oh.
That's how politics works these days. So something has to be done about where people live. Like, even my overhead, I was looking at it, like almost half of my monies goes to rents, you know. That's a lot, like 40%. It always traditionally was supposed to be a third, you know, and I live outside of Los Angeles. Yeah. But slowly it creeps up around here.
What city do you live in again?
Claremont.
Okay.
Claremont, California. Okay. We like to say home of oak trees and PhDs. There's 5 colleges in the city of Claremont.
Wow. Hey, do you think that everyone should you should get people, like, you should get your kids tested young with a test like this? And how young? And could it, are there any harms that you could do by testing them?
No. It's not a spit test. But you know, we all did COVID tests, so kids, you know, we didn't mind shoving stuff up and making kids cry for our COVID obsession. So no, it's a harmless test, and it's just the information for the parents. I tend to think.
Would you tell your kid if you tested your kid at 5? Would you tell? Yeah, when would you tell them?
We're going to test our 7-year-old, probably not our 3-year-old, you know, because he can't really reason. You know what's a bummer for all parents, for all you new parents? So at the time my middle son Elvis was born, I was doing pretty good at celebrity rehab. I was doing pretty good. And he lived this magnificent life. I went down to open a rehab in Rio de Janeiro. We lived down there for 4 months. Then he'd been to Paris. He'd been to London. He'd been to New York. I had an apartment in New York. I had an intervention company in New York. Like, you live in large, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't remember a fucking thing. Kids don't remember. They don't remember till they're like 4. So basically, we should just keep them around the house until they're 4. Don't waste your time going somewhere. I can't believe he has no recollection of being in Brazil,
right?
Like, where people don't even speak English, right? And yet, you know, I thought I was giving him this fabulous experience in life. No, kids' memories kind of click in between 3 and 4. I think. I don't know. I'm not a pediatrician, but
will you tell your 7-year-old the results of the test?
Yeah,
you will.
I mean, we talk about it now. She knows what addiction is. She knows. We call it people that are having a hard time, right? Because
Okay.
when you live around me, my kids live around me, they've been to the rehab, they see all these people living there, and some people crying and some people, saying they want to leave. And I remember the first time Sydney, my daughter, was there, she was like, "Are you making people stay here?" And I'm like, nobody's making anybody stay here. You know what I mean? But people, like, as soon as I walk in, they're like, "Bob, I need a pass. I'm supposed to be able, I've been waiting for 2 days to get toothpaste," and blah, blah, blah. I'm like the center of demands, right? When I walk in, and she sensed at like 5 years old that, like, I'm holding these people against their will. No, you're volunteering to be here. I'm sorry we didn't get you toothpaste, the personal Tom's toothpaste that you want. So we're gonna tell her. My son Elvis is very excited to get it. I think
How old's he?
13. I think he wants it. My 38-year-old wants to do it. He's the guy I do the podcast, my podcast Don't Die podcast with. He's doesn't know whether he wants to test my grandson, who's 1 year old. I don't think there's any point, because the real tool of the test, I mean, maybe it's for you to know that you have a kid that's overly sensitive to the environment. Maybe that's some knowledge for a parent of a 1 year old. But more, I'm thinking it's a tool for discussion. Really, it's just a tool in a long list of things that lead to homelessness, drug dependency, obesity, hopelessness, helplessness, lost. There's a lot of hoops you got to jump through to get there. But this first one,
Yeah.
If you have it, it's essential to have it. You can jump through the other hoops. I always give an example. I've had a lot of relationships in my life. I'm 63 years old. I had 2 girlfriends that became heroin addicts with me back in the day, right?
Wow.
When I was playing music. As soon as they got me out of their lives, one of them didn't even go to rehab. They just stopped taking drugs and lived happily ever after. PTA member, been married to the guy after me, for 25 years, happy, fun, productive life. I believe that they jump through the hoops, but they don't have the genetics for it. So you can jump through the hoops and go down that road. But and the AA Big Book says this in one statement, it says, there are those 2 who seem, it says, given good reason they will cease. Meaning, if a doctor tells you, you got liver inflammation, you got cirrhosis of the liver, that non-genetically predisposed person will stop that day. Now there's been a consequence, and they will have no problem stopping. I give this example. I have a friend, Mike, who smoked pot every day, forever. I met him when we were like 22. This was on when he was like 50. And, and he saw my travels and tribulations. And we used to do coke together back when he was in law school. And one day he said, I on a Friday, he used to come over, he'd buy a gram of coke and come over to my house, and we'd go see a band or something. And he ended up being a very powerful music player. I won't say his name, but he'll know who it is if he's listening. And he came over to my house, and I said, dude, and I had a plate out, because every time he came over, he liked cocaine. He would bring cocaine. I had the plate out ready. I'm waiting for Mike to come by. Come on, get over here, motherfucker. And he comes in, he goes, oh no, I can't be doing coke anymore. I'm like, excuse me? And he goes, yeah. I'm in my 3rd year of law, and if, like, I've given up my life to become a lawyer, and if I get even caught for possession, I'd be disqualified from the bar. And I was like, yeah, you're not getting arrested. Go back and buy a gram of coke.
Right.
Right? To me, I'm the addict mentality. To him, he doesn't have the genetic predisposition. He doesn't have that compulsion and that drive, though he does cocaine all the time, though he smokes pot every day. So follow forward. I become this addiction specialist. He becomes one of the most powerful lawyers in music. And every time I go visit him, he had this office in New York City, and he had a balcony where he'd go out and sit and smoke pot and whatever. And I go there to visit him, and I go, "We're gonna go out on the balcony?" He's like, "No, I stopped smoking pot." And I was like, "You're kidding me! This is a lifelong pot smoker."
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "Yeah. I don't tell many people, but he was holding his son, who had just been born. and he had just smoked pot, and he dropped his son on the ground. Nothing happened.
Right.
But that visceral thing of like, maybe me being stoned is why I dropped my son.
And an addict wouldn't make that connection.
An addict would just be, he's okay. Like,
right,
my sons.
Right.
Like, yeah, he's okay.
Right.
You know. But
Interesting.
that thing, he just stopped. And so then I quizzed him, because he's a really good friend. I said, did you get depressed? He said, no, I started to feel better every day, and I can breathe. And that is not a typical addict's response to stopping lifelong pot use. They're usually depressed, withdrawn, sometimes suicidal, sometimes hallucinations, with just like, and it goes on for months. He described feeling so much better, like he couldn't believe it. He didn't realize how pot had dulled him, and how wonderful life was. This is not a natural addict response to sobriety, right? And I have all this personal evidence, actual documented, quantified, evidence-based research, that this test really tells you that you have this indefinable need or sensitivity that modern life in 21st century America it's not copacetic. You're going to be anxious. It's going to be edgy. You're going to be depressed. You're going to feel awkward. You're going to feel all these things, because you're not hearing the world right. You're not experiencing other people correctly, fully, like you could. And when you smoke some pot, or you take some Valium, or you take some fentanyl, all of a sudden you now feel how everyone else feels. The problem is you can't stay there. It declines, it diminishes and releases and leaves your body in 4 hours. So you need to do it again to feel like how everyone else does. And then it's down the road. Now you need it to get up in the morning. Now it doesn't make you feel how everyone else does. It has diminishing returns, but you have no choice. You've gone down this road now. You're going to end up in a detox, in a rehab center, and dying. It's so sad. The death rate, over 100,000 people in America die of drug overdoses every year. Think about that, 100,000.
I know, it's crazy. And you know what's crazy is, and maybe you'll unfuck me on this, but it sounds like something really bizarre has happened in the last 5 years.
Yes.
It used to be people died. There's two things. One, you go touch on the movie, and we'll touch on it in a second. But people used to die from the drugs that they knew they were doing. Now it sounds like the majority of people who are dying don't even know what the drugs are that they did.
Yes, and people are lying about what the drugs are. So,
which is correct. Nuts. Which went from, hey, don't do drugs, you'll be addicted, to don't do drugs, you're gonna die.
I can give people at home a really quick kind of explanation of what happened.
Please.
Traditionally, outlaws, musicians, counterculture people, experimented with drugs, got addicted to drugs. So you can look at the consistent.
Jim Morrison. They were cool.
Charlie Parker, the greatest saxophone player who ever lived. And when he died at 35 years old, on the coroner's report, they thought he was a 60-year-old male. That's what drugs and alcohol do.
Hey, what is that? Sorry, is that a window behind you?
Yeah, a glass stained window.
Did I just see a mountain lion walk behind you?
Yeah. Oh, maybe. Oh, no, that's my cat.
oh. I was like, holy shit.
You know what there is, though? There's a bobcat that lives in our barn. He comes around. Bobcats are strange animals to California. You have them in Santa Cruz, I think.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Bobcats
they're a trip.
They're trippy, because it looks like a cat, but it's just a little bit bigger. And here's the problem with cats out in nature. It'll eat a cat.
Right.
So we've had some cats disappear around here. But let me explain it to you. It was this outlaw kind of population, Billie Holiday, jazz musicians. Then it goes into the Beat generation. Then the hippie movement kind of exploded it. Timothy Leary kind of exploded it and exposed it to middle class kind of kids. But still, it was a small part of the population. The Sackler family and Purdue Pharmaceuticals and OxyContin exposed the entire country to it, right? So you had people that just, I mean, I was big on introducing people to drugs. I thought drugs were a freedom and a kind of exciting thing. And I would offer heroin or whatever somebody wanted. And a lot of people would say, no, Bob, I'm not going to be doing heroin tonight. Right. So there was a mass part of the population want nothing to do with heroin. Right. Bradley Noel was not one of those people. Kurt Cobain was not one of those people. They wanted to be a part of it. So it was small percentage. Then when you're prescribing OxyContin to women for their menstrual problems, and you're prescribing OxyContin to every kid who gets hurt on a high school football game, and you're prescribing OxyContin to anybody that pulls a groin muscle at a gym at CrossFit, and you're prescribing OxyContin to every old person who's just got old people hurt, and it's just a mass of opioids across America that created the opioid epidemic. It comes from one drug company, Purdue Pharmaceutical. It comes from one philosophy of drug distribution, which is the subscription model, rather than the give people medicine like antibiotics. Everybody knows you take them five pills in a week, and then that's it. You know, you can't make trillions of dollars off that. Right. You can make it if you need to take an antibiotic pill every day, and then 2 months from now you need to take 2, and 4 months from now you need to take 10. You can make a lot of money off the subscription model of prescription drugs, and that was the Sackler family's business model. Get everyone addicted, taking more and more, right? They had a problem, people were dying. And it's Barack Obama who really started, his administration, his Justice Department started paying attention to it. And they turned off the spigot. They made it harder for doctors to prescribe. They made it more risky for McCormick, which is a distributor of drugs. How does OxyContin get from the Sacklers to your local CVS? It's a company called McCormick. And they knew what was happening. And they were held accountable like crazy, even more so than McCormick, than the Sacklers, because McCormick is bigger. I think the fines that McCormick paid were in the billions and billions of dollars. So anyways, Obama cut it off, and he made McCormick and the distributors of drugs to your local pharmacy. They had a trigger thing that more than 2,000 doses goes out, the federal government needs to be contacted, right? So Obama turned the spigot off that the Sacklers had turned on. What was lacking in their insight about addiction? Do you think these people are just going to stop taking opioids, you fucking idiot? No fucking way. So I was still involved on a street level of drugs. I was sober and I was counseling, but I had a street level drug treatment center called MAP. And I was noticing like my addict population, the musicians and ne'er-do-wells and the traditional addict population, were scoring drugs for doctors, nurses, lawyers. They were making money off of providing the heroin, the replacement for OxyContin, to these really well-functioning people. And I was fascinated by it, right? How did doctors who were addicted to OxyContin end up heroin addicted? Because the spigot was turned off. They couldn't get Vicodin, they couldn't get OxyContin, they couldn't get Percocet, and they had to get something. So they had, you know, these real drug addicts getting them heroin and showing them how to do it, right? The problem, and then I talked to the 18th Street gang here, which was gang before MS. The problem was the potency of the heroin wasn't strong enough to hold the OxyContin addicts because there's so much morphine in OxyContin. So they would do what would knock anybody out of heroin, 40% morphine heroin, and not feel it and still be kind of sick and not feel right to go to work. So they would have to take more and more heroin to equal the OxyContin that they were addicted to. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
And so the cartels started to recognize this and up the potency of the heroin, right? And so you got to 50% morphine percentage in your local street heroin to 60%. Along comes fentanyl. Fentanyl is a man-made product. You can add it to the heroin, boost the intoxication of the heroin, and lower the price. The first time I realized about fentanyl, there was a fentanyl distributor in China. The New Yorker magazine did an article about him. He was sending fentanyl to people's door fronts here in America before it was illegal. And he was buying $2,000 worth of fentanyl. The people that were buying it, the dealers that eventually started dealing fentanyl in America or putting it in the heroin, it would cost $2,000 to $4,000. And it would translate to 5 to 8 million to 10 to 12 million dollars worth of heroin product on the streets of America. When I saw that economics, and this is probably 2005, 2007, when I saw you can invest $4,000 and make $5 million, even I thought maybe I could do that one time.
Hey, and you just get the pill stamping machines on Amazon. People are just buying it.
Yeah. They would just stamp their own things. And that's what led to the high overdose rate, is the illicit distribution of fentanyl. And people didn't know how powerful it was and how crazy it was. Now it's in everything. Now it's, you think you're buying meth, there's fentanyl in it. You think you're buying heroin, there's fentanyl in it. You think you're buying fentanyl, there's meth in it. A friend of mine who's a treatment professional, who's very close to me, relapsed, and he had his drugs tested that he was taking. There was literally fentanyl in everything. There was fentanyl in the Xanax, there was fentanyl in the heroin, there was fentanyl in the cocaine, there was fentanyl in the meth, there's meth in the fentanyl. So this is why we're in the mess that we're in. Kids can literally have their first drug experience and die. And die.
They are. That is happening.
They are.
Every day.
And so, what to do about it, I started this organization called Don't Die, meaning it's just a reminder, like drugs are deadly. I know we've been, saying drugs are deadly for 100 years. They're really deadly now. You need to listen to me. You could die today.
Yeah.
And it seems like, and rise in the lack of caring about other people in our country. I think the drug dealers don't really care. That's why they had to up the consequence for the distribution of fentanyl death, right? Because drug dealers didn't really care. Like, I hate to say it, but my drug dealers cared about me. They came to my concerts. My one guy that I got drugs from for years and years named Wedo, he was an albino Mexican guy named Wedo. And I loved him. And when I would go out of town on tour, he would take care of my girlfriend and make sure one of his lieutenants went and brought her enough drugs to get through a couple days. And he called me from federal prison and said, "They're playing Body and Soul. Listen. And my song was on the radio. That's inside awesome. The federal prison. He didn't want me to die because I was the greatest customer he ever had. I spent $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a week. The modern callousness in America led to this death rate. People don't care about people the way they used to. They really don't. I know that sounds outrageous. I really don't think when Amazon, one of the most destructive things to the American economy, comes along, you don't realize, hey, the neighbor that lives down the street from you that your kids play with, he owns the supermarket. The local, boutique supermarket.
Yep.
If you buy everything from Amazon, he's going to go out of business and he's not going to be able to live in your neighborhood anymore. And your kids are not going to play with him. And it's going to be a very sad thing. There's no sense of community. There's no sense of caring about one another in that way anymore. It's just like, get the most amount of money. This covetedness and this celebration of wealth, the Kardashians, makes me so sick. There are worse things to be than a drug addict. The Kardashians.
There's in the movie at one point you say, if you believe what other people say about you, you become a parody of yourself.
Yeah.
I think that there's a whole generation that's regardless if they're famous or not, that believes what Instagram is telling them who they are.
And you see that in the high suicide rate in tweener girls. That's no more evidence you need. The highest rise in suicide in America is tweener girls between the ages of 10 and 13. That precious age of young girls who are living through social media and what people say about them and say about their outfit and say about their about their braces or glasses or whatever. We need to protect our children away from the internet. It's
You
more
know, they
dangerous. It's more dangerous than pot. I can tell you the internet's more dangerous than pot.
Bob, they've basically mental illness for girls is now a phase of their life. Like they've entered it into the timeline like it's normal.
I don't know if it's wrong, but I only let my kids play games. They're not allowed to have social
No, they shouldn't.
media.
No, kids
But the
should not have
games are
social
so
media.
violent. Like my daughter plays Roblox, and I'll walk in there sometimes on the Xbox, like, holy fuck, what are you playing? And they're like little girls killing with guns. It's a little bit much, but at least she's not getting bullied and picked on social media. You're just trying to do the best you can. You know what I mean?
Bob, this Trish says, Bob, do you feel reefer has medicinal value?
Oh yeah, for sure it does. For sure, marijuana and hemp in particular has
I don't even
incredible.
understand the question. What does that mean, medicinal value? Going for a walk has medicinal value.
Yeah,
Taking
no,
10
but
deep breaths has medicinal value. What does that mean? Like,
well,
you're
I
saying
think of it
rolling
as
something
hemp.
up and burning it and inhaling the fumes has medicinal value?
No, they can eat it. People
Eat
that
it.
I know that are using it. It's good for pain. I have some friends that have chronic pain that use it. It's better than opioids for pain, right? Because opioids you need to increase. You know, in opioids, here's the diminishing returns of opioids. You need to double the dose every 90 days, and it's not going to end.
Wow.
It's just going to keep doubling the dose every 90 days, right? Uh, uh, Edibles is not that. And I have some friends that are on it for chronic pain. But, you know, a lot of us have lived pretty rough lives. You get to be 60, you can barely walk and get out of bed. And I've seen medicinal use of edibles for that. I've also seen hemp as this incredible pain management salve. I've used it. And like any addict, I overused it and made all the nerves in my leg. I compound fractured my leg at a concert. Continued playing the concert, by the way, until I looked down and saw a puddle of blood so big it was like out of a horror movie.
Is that the scene in the movie where they're walking you away and the
No, that
lady
was I
tells
broke
the
my
cameraman to go away?
no, I broke my kneecap at that one. That was
Oh
not
my
that bad.
God.
No, there was an era like we were all pretty physical performers, right? Like you don't see that much anymore. Like and so I played this concert before, and then Eddie Vedder was this kid that we all knew from San Diego. He was Crazy Eddie from San Diego. He had joined this band in Seattle. He's from Illinois actually, and then moved to San Diego, and then was a big fan of Chili Peppers, and he was around Our World, and he's just the nicest, craziest kid from San Diego, even though I think he's only like 4 years younger than us. When you're 24 and somebody's 19, that's a big age gap, right?
Yeah,
so he was
yeah.
Crazy Eddie from San Diego. He becomes a singer at Pearl Jam, which was a band called Mookie Blaylock, by the way, that didn't have a singer. And so then I'm playing Pink Pop in Europe, this festival, and you go through this TV rehearsal thing, and one of the guys, while I'm standing there, here, waiting for whatever you're always waiting. When you're a musician, you're always waiting somewhere. And I'm standing on stage waiting, and one of the production guys goes, your friend Eddie got on the TV camera, like
Crane.
platform, and
Yep.
and jumped off into the crowd. You're not going to do that, right, Bob? And I was like, not if Eddie did it. So because I'm an obsessive, insecure, I can't believe Eddie Vedder or Crazy Eddie is this big deal. So the next day we play the concert, and I climbed to the top of the whole building. I don't know. I think you see it in the documentary.
Yep, I saw in the
and
doc.
I thought I'd get like halfway up and I could jump off the PA system into the crowd. And I got there and it was too far away from the crowd. Like it's really far away, like 20 yards or something. I couldn't believe, because when you're on stage, you look up. If I climb up there, I can jump onto the crowd. I got up there and I couldn't. So then I just kept climbing, and I thought I'll get to the front of the whole tent, and then I could jump down. I got up there and I looked down. It's like 100 feet, and I'm gonna die if I jump from up here. And so then I got paralyzed in fear. right? I'm still singing, by the way. I still have a cordless mic and I'm singing, but I'm paralyzed in fear up on top of the tarp. And they had to kind of get production guys to get up there and help me and reassure me that I was going to get back down. Then I got back down on the stage and I started dancing and I fell and broke my kneecap.
Oh my
It was
God.
kind of, but it was all this challenge, like Crazy Eddie's going to out crazy me. Fuck that. And so that was kind of a legendary concert. Actually, by the way, it was one of the top 10 moments in Pink Pop history, and that concert's been going on for 50 years. Like, a lot of people thought I was going to die that day. I thought I might die that
Sounds
day.
like you almost, and it's in the movie. It looked like you
Yeah,
were
it's in
going to
the
die
movie.
that day.
So no, the compound fracture was in Canada. Like, I pushed against the PA and my leg got caught and it fell down, and then when I lifted my leg out of the thing and some roadie helped me push the PA to get my leg free of the PA, the leg came out, compound fracture, that pulled out as I was trying to get my leg out.
Did you feel it break?
No, I was so amped up from playing. So then I went back, I was standing at the microphone, and John, our bass player at the time, was like looking down, and he looked at me, eye contact, and looked down, and there was a circle of blood around me. And my whole jeans was just soaked in blood. And I pulled my pant leg up and I could see the bone sticking out. And that's when I panicked. I was like, holy shit. But I think we played another song when I had that.
That's insane.
And here's an example. That was in the 80s. I was at a Canadian hospital. They were amazing. Universal health care, sewed it up, surgery, out in 2 days. I went out in at like midnight, and one day I was out the third day. And I'm leaving, and they're not giving me a prescription, right? And I'm like, hey, doc, this fucking hurts, And I had a walking cast on it. And he said, you can get codeine over the counter here in Canada. And I was like, I am going to need something more than codeine, doc. Come on now.
Yeah.
And the doctor, this Canadian doctor, is so cool. He looked at me and goes, you look like you know where you can get something more powerful than codeine, Mr. Forrest. And he just walked out of the room.
Wow.
A little bit different than when the Sacklers take over the world, isn't it?
Hey, so drugs went from being like the cool thing to do and exploration and for freedom and for exploring being better musician, artist, to people getting addicted just through prescriptions. And that's game over. Now
Game over.
Game over.
The cat's out of the bag. So now you have an exposure rate of 5%. Now you have an exposure rate of 20%. 20% of the American public is on drugs. What do you do? Obama turns the spigot off. What, are those 15% just stop taking it? That's what led to all the social ills that we have, the DCFS and families being destroyed. It's the opioid crisis that was created by a pharmaceutical company, with co-signed by the federal government and HMO system and all this. And that's why you can't put the genie back in the bottle. We've got this problem, and now we have to solve it. And how do we solve it? And your listener asking about medical marijuana or whatever, given a choice of homelessness and opioid addiction and fentanyl death, I would choose people to be on edible marijuana. If they can't get to the other side of complete abstinence sobriety, there are other avenues. And I didn't believe in them in the beginning until the death rate got so crazy. We've got to do something, anything to stow the tide, to change this direction we're going in, right? The effect of drug addiction on families. Don't Die, my organization is I'm actually the least active. Like the Don't Die chapter that's in Los Angeles, really, we just do Narcan awareness and Narcan giveaways. But people all across the country have taken it and run with it. In Huntington, West Virginia, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in Sacramento, California, they started Don't Die chapters, and they're very, very involved, especially the Milwaukee guys. I went to Milwaukee 2 times. I gave a lecture at the college. I met the governor. The governor of Wisconsin talked to me about how to deal with the opioid crisis, right? It was just amazing what's happened. But I went to West Virginia. Do you know that the number one, the increase in orphans in West Virginia is caused by opiate death of both parents?
Wow.
So you have orphans in West Virginia because both their parents are dead of drugs.
Wow.
What a destructive thing that is for those children. They're like, can you imagine both your parents
No,
are dead?
that's a crazy stat. That's like the number one cause of death in the United States for kids under 5 is drowning. Like, when you hear that shit, you're like,
Right.
"Wow, I had no fucking idea."
Yeah. So this
Number one cause of orphans in West
orphans,
Virginia is both parents died from a
a
drug
drug
overdose.
overdose. And so you have grandparents raising grandkids. You have it all over the Midwest and all over where the opioid crisis hit the worst, which is, West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky. Your Midwestern states really took a toll on this. The Florida Panhandle, like, it just devastated that part of the southern United States, just destroyed families.
Bob,
And
I'm
right,
52, and when I was growing up, the big thing that they had you scared with was AIDS. It was everywhere.
right,
So I'm 11 years younger than you. So I graduated
yeah,
high school in 1990. So from like 1985 to like 1995, I mean, and Eazy-E died and Magic Johnson got
right,
it, and it was crazy, right? And so I was terrified of sex, unprotected sex,
right, right.
like terrified. Uh, is that the component of is that and maybe it saved my life, maybe it didn't. I mean, fuck, I don't know, but I never got AIDS. And does this DNA for addiction, when I saw the test, I was like, "Oh, this might be a good way to scare the shit out of someone so that they never
Yes,
try
I think
drugs."
you can. I think you can. I think you
Is there
can.
anything like
But it's not the kids I want to scare. I want to motivate the parents. The parents are just heads buried in the sand in America, including myself. When my older son started getting drunk and high, I was oblivious to it. I always tell the story. So my son was probably 12, and we lived together in this big house in Echo Park. And Gibby from the Butthole Surfers was staying at my house. He was in town recording or something. And I don't know if any of your listeners know, the Butthole Surfers are about the craziest band that America's ever had. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they had the wildest live performance of anyone, just mind blowing. And there's a new documentary coming out about them, I think, in the fall. They were from Texas. They seemed like the Manson family. They just had the most beautiful, crazy music. And they put on a show that just scared you and awed you and turned you on and turned you off, and they were a big drug band and everything. So Gibby is this legendary crazy man in rock music, comes into my bedroom and he goes, I believe that Elijah is intoxicated right now. He's from Texas, and he's a funny guy. And I go, what? No way. What? My kid? And I go walking downstairs and I go into Elijah's bedroom and he's just like drunk out of his mind, just laying on his bed.
was
And
Gibby
I'd always,
sober at that point?
yeah. And
And how old was Elijah, your
he was
son?
a 12.
Okay.
And I was oblivious to it. And apparently he had been like that for like 6 months or a year, and I was just oblivious to it.
Wow.
So I'm not condemning parents that bury their head in the sand and don't know what's going on with their kids. But this tool should wake you up. I think America is woken up. Your kids could die of drugs tonight. That never existed before. I hate to tell you.
Right.
They could drunk. Here's the conditions. They could go to a party, get drunk, get in a car, and die in a car accident.
Right.
No, they could ingest a pill and be dead today.
Someone could just give them a couple of Xanax and they're really fentanyl death pills.
Yes, and be dead. And so I think parents are aware of that, and parents just need some motivation and fear of to take some action and talk to their kids about drugs and talk to their kids about how to cope with being a teenager, how to cope with feeling insecure, how to cope, conversation. The test is a tool for conversation. The test is knowledge. Knowledge is power. The test isn't going to give you carte blanche to take heroin if you're not at risk, and it's not going to cure you from jumping through those hoops. Only conversation, community, knowledge, enlightenment is, right? And that's what we are lacking in America right now. There's all this, I have like I don't know, like 100 employees probably on any given day. And so, and I interfaced with them. I had some out in Temecula when the rise of Trump, right? And Trump, one of Trump's big things was he was going to revoke Obamacare. Remember that? I don't know why they were so focused on that. But so I started seeing Trump bumper stickers on the employees' bumpers, of their cars when I pull in. And if Trump had succeeded in repealing Obamacare, that rehab center wouldn't exist and those jobs wouldn't exist. So I'm sitting at lunch one time with a gal that works there I really think is amazing and good hard worker, and I know she's a Trumper, and this other therapist who's kind of Trump sympathizer, and we're just talking, and I said, I'm trying to understand the Trump thing. I know you all think I'm some fucking liberal from Hollywood. I'm not, actually, but I'm fascinated by how people will get so cultish passionate about him to their own detriment. If he really succeeds and becomes president and revokes Obamacare, we won't be able to have this rehab center, and you guys won't have these good paying jobs. I'm just wondering, like, do you think about that when you're so excited and passionate about Trump? And the one girl who's really passionate about it, I'll never forget, she said, I don't give a fuck if I lose my job. I want him to go to Washington, D.C. and burn that town to the ground. And I knew right then, this is in June of 2016, I was like, holy God, this thing is not political. This thing is tribal. This thing is not policy. This thing is visceral. This thing is nothing to do with Donald Trump. This is everything to do with childhood trauma and the haves and have-nots. And he's just this lightning rod, this catalyst for that. He has tapped into something that's in America, these lost, forgotten people, let's call them, that feel outside and not a part of, and they are out for blood.
You think Trump's the new punk rock?
Yeah, that's what a lot of my friends like. It split the punk rock community. There's a lot of punk rockers that just like that is the most punk rock thing that's ever happened in American politics.
It doesn't help that people like Neil Young let us down. It doesn't.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? That's at least for me. A lot of the problem is these people who I chased. I partied with for freedom. Their music was the freedom music.
Yeah.
Like as we rolled into
Rage
2000,
Against the Machine.
yeah. As we saw them roll into 2020, they were exposed as complete fucking frauds.
Well, don't forget how I started this interview, the brown M&Ms.
Yeah.
I don't think successful musicians can really understand what common people go through, right? I just don't. I don't think politicians can either. I don't think celebrities can. George Clooney has no more idea of what it's like to be an American than a Martian does.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
Hey, you saw Drew flip the script.
Yeah.
I don't know Drew, but I watched him go. It was very nice watching him kind of navigate the landscape publicly and honestly. There were a few people did that. Joe Rogan did that. Drew did that. There were some people just who are navigating. Russell Brand did that. You saw them kind of like navigate the landscape out in the open.
Yeah,
the psychological landscape. I mean, don't forget Tucker Carlson was a superstar liberal over at CNN too.
Right, and the evolution. People call it an evolution. Drew calls his an evolution. I think it's just much more commonsensical than that. I was raised with certain values. And I then, in my young adulthood, I adopted some new ideas too. So fundamentally, I'm kind of a combination of my dad's, less government, don't butt into people's business. There's a Hank Williams song, mind your own business and you won't be minding mine. I try to live my life based on that. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you do. Vaccinate your kids or don't vaccinate your kids. I don't give a fuck. I've always been like that. Half my friends are anti-vaxxers. And the other half are like, kill the anti-vaxxers. They're going to kill our children. And I'm like, neither. Like, whatever. Get your kids vaccinated or don't.
Was it Bukowski who said mob stands for mind your own business? Remember that? Like, hey, the good thing about the mob is they mind their own business. They don't.
I knew Charles Bukowski. I can't believe there's a person on earth that still remembers him.
The crime family was great in your town as long as you stayed out of their way.
Yeah.
They mind your own business.
Yeah. Just, I loved Bukowski, and I got to know him later in life. And he just told it like it was.
Did you know Crumb? Did you know Crumb?
I met him a couple of times in San Francisco. What's interesting, when you play music, you meet everybody,
Right.
because somebody inevitably has a friend who likes your band, and there's this whole network of world that music. I mean, I've been to places you could never dream of because I was in a band and I wrote some songs that people like. It's amazing. And
I like Crumb
musicians
because he
should,
was into fat chicks, and I really like fat.
yeah, it was his wife that liked my band.
Yeah, Crumb was odd. Did you see that documentary?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Why?
But I got into the Dead world. I was a Deadhead when I was a kid. Not really a Dead. I was more like a credit card Deadhead. I wasn't like hanging out in the parking lot. But and we were very popular in San Francisco. You know, music used to be regional, right? I played Santa Cruz 100 times. The Crystal Ballroom in Santa Cruz. So the Chili Peppers shows, Jane's Addiction shows, Rage. Everybody's played the Crystal Ballroom in Santa Cruz, right? Because it's an easy run, we'd call it, right? So if you want to make some money in between albums, this is before the music business became streaming and all this nonsense. You could go on a local run to make money, pocket money, we'd call it. So you'd play Calamity Jane's in Las Vegas. Then you'd play Sacramento. Bakersfield had a place called One Step Beyond. Then you played Sacramento at some place near a strip mall. And then you'd go to San Francisco. You'd play on Broadway or the Kennel Club or someplace in San Francisco. Then you could play Santa Cruz Crystal Ballroom. Then you could play Santa Luis Obispo College and come home. And in 2 weeks, you can make enough money to live for 6 months, right? And we used to all do that. It's a circle. It's really fun too. You get to go. Where do you get to go? Las Vegas, San Francisco, Santa Cruz.
You go in a van? I mean? You would go in a van or a bus?
Yeah, man. And with a U-Haul truck, and it was just so fun. Like, you know, and you'd meet so many cool people, and the more you play somewhere, the more that town gets to know you and like you and whatever. So Thelonious Monster was pretty popular in San Francisco, and the Dead's kids used to come and see us, and then all of a sudden they would tell you, you know, my dad's in the Grateful Dead. I know you probably don't like them, and I was like, oh my God. No, I love the Dead.
Did people not like the Dead because they got too popular? Is that what happened?
Well, punk rock was thought to be against everything. I was never against anything. I was for something. Like I was for good music. Reason why punk rock came along is because music was in such an awful place. You got Rick Wakeman and fucking Owner of a Lonely Heart and all this horrible music being made, and punk rock came up and just wiped it off the map, and that becomes the independent rock, you know, the indie rock movement, which was Chili Peppers and us and Replacements and Husker Du and Black Flag, and that's the mid 80s. Meat Puppets was all these bands that are like really making a change in America under the radar of the music business, right? But it's growing and growing, and then Nirvana is kind of the thing that explodes it to the world, right? So this is before the explosion. And I always think, you know, the New York Dolls were the spark, right? And Nirvana was the explosion. And in between that is 20 years.
When you see Kurt Cobain, by that point, you've seen the cycle of life go by you several times, right? When you see him, are you like, fuck, that's Joe from this other band that I knew and I know what happens?
No, well, I mean, he was such a great artist. So Anthony, I used to live in what's now Silver Lake, the hippest part, but no one lived there then. And Anthony lived in Beechwood Canyon. He came over to my house. This is before cell phones, right? Like you didn't really have cell phones in the communication you have. You just go over, imagine just going over to somebody's house thinking their car. And if their car's in the driveway, they're home.
Yeah, and you just go in.
He comes in and he goes, I got something you have to listen to. And I said, and I started to walk from my front door into the living room with my stereo system.
How many times did he told you that before? Had you heard that? Did he say that every time you came to his house or
Well,
no?
usually he was coming to play his songs for me, like new demos or something. And he didn't come in the house. He said, no, we got to go somewhere and listen to this. And I was like, okay. So I just walked out, got in his car, and we drove to Chinatown in Los Angeles. Has a hill up above, and the sun was setting, and you could see all of downtown LA, kind of by Dodger Stadium. And he looked at me and he goes, ready? And I said, yeah. And he pushed a cassette in and he turned it up full blast in this Camaro he had. And he played Teen Spirit. And it was before it came out. And I was like, and it ended. And I was just sitting there and we're looking at the sunset. And he goes, what do you think? And I said, play it again. And he rewound it. And we listened to it again. And I said, that's that kid from Seattle, isn't it? And he said, yep. Now, this is because we're all aware of other artists and songwriting. We do this about Jane's Addiction, anybody coming and rage and whatever, right? The awe of that song and the power and the melody of that song was undeniable. You can't, and that was the song that we were all trying to write. That's what I believe. And I believe Paul Westerberg came closest to it with a song called Unsatisfied. It was a description of how we all felt.
But going to the drug thing specifically, could you hear that guy's a drug addict?
I knew he was. I already knew him. Like Bleach had come out. It wasn't something I still knew I was like as good or better than Bleach. You know what I mean? We're all kind of, that's another thing with when you remove competition like the millennials did.
Yeah.
Nothing is good anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We were in competition. It was friendly.
That's why manhood, by the way, that's why manhood's taking a dive too, because we need competition.
It was friendly competition.
Yeah. You know what when I was talking to you earlier, I was thinking I'm not a porn guy, but like people always talk about how bad it is. But I just realized earlier talking to you why porn's so bad, because the best thing about competition amongst males is us trying to I use the metaphor juggle more balls so we can get more chicks. You juggle 5, so I juggle 6. Right. You juggle 7. Now I can just give up and just go watch porn and jerk off.
Well,
the competition's dead. The competition's dead. It makes us pussies.
And people are all on the internet. They don't know how to talk. So part of why we got in bands was girls, to meet girls, right? So
wait a second. Part of?
Majority of. So, well, free beer.
I was born to chase girls.
Yeah. So, but watch this. So up until like 83 or 84, you knew what people in bands looked like. And Anthony and Flea were my friends, and they looked like people who were in bands, right? Yeah. I didn't look like someone who was in bands. Right? I'm a nerdy guy with pimples and glasses. Like, they don't have people like this in bands. So that thing that I could, a path I could take, which is become a singer of a band and you'll get respect and accolades and girls will like you and all the stuff that so many people got in bands because of, I couldn't do. Then I went and saw a band called The Replacements in 1983, and I saw a guy who looked just like me, and I was like, holy fuck, you can do it. And I remember going home and thinking I could be in a band. And then Anthony said, yeah, why do you think you can't be in a band? And I said, because I don't look like you. And he said, oh, you're so stupid.
What was the guy's name in The Replacements? Do you remember his name?
Paul Westerberg. And that's when you called each other stupid. Now you can't even call each other stupid. Like, that was a stupid idea. Anthony thought I could be the singer of a band, and he had kind of suggested it, like, you can really sing, you should form a band. I'd be like, oh no, I can't be in a band, look at me. I didn't say that, but then when I verbalized that to him, he was like, that's stupid. But that's another reason I believe you have such dumbasses running around thinking they're important, because no one's ever called them stupid. They're stupid. They should have been called stupid their whole lives, and they wouldn't be fucking thinking their opinion is important. Right. You know what I mean? I'm serious about this.
Oh, I hear you loud and clear. I hear you loud and clear.
So I formed a band pretty much within a few months from that experience of seeing The Replacements, and that I became a part of the movement of like, and we were getting our opinion out, and our opinion was, freedom. We didn't have to sit and talk about personal responsibility. It was just built into the DNA. Like, you're responsible for you. Nobody gives a fuck about your excuses. Right. Your excuses don't matter. Get the fuck out of here. Right. I can't even remember a person who was an excuse machine like so many these days. Like, I don't remember people making, like, I believe right now, most people get consumed and they latch on to their mental health issues like anxiety or depression or childhood trauma. I believe they latch on to that, and that's such a good excuse to not take action, to not seize the day, to not live life to its fullest. They just have a good excuse and they sit on the sidelines, and we have millions of young people just sitting on the sidelines. They got to get fucking off their ass. Everybody's got childhood trauma. Most people are anxious in social settings, and my wife is like that. She has like anxiety, and she's a really shy person, right? And when she describes things, it's like talking to a Martian to me. I've never felt insecure. I couldn't wait to get on stage. I've never been nervous in my life, ever, about anything. I've gone out, like when I went and spoke in Washington, in Wisconsin, in front of 4,000 people. I was talking to the guys that did the organization Don't Die, and they're like, "Do you have something prepared?" And I was like, "No." I'm just gonna fucking talk.
Yeah, most people would shit their pants. Hey, do you think that's blissfully ignorant?
No, I think
No.
it's learned. I think my dad was confident. My mom was a college graduate. She was big on preparation. My mom was kind of, what they say, the B word. She was unbelievably accountable. Like, I had to recite Chaucer's Canterbury Tales in Swedish when I was like 5 years old. And you had to read a book every week. You had to read one book every week at my house. My dad was born in 1918. My mom was born in 1920. And
where were they born? Where were they born?
18 and 20 in Minnesota. Swedish and French. And that my mom graduated from college, and
when women didn't graduate from college.
When women did, and she had her own business. She had a beauty salon in Cloquet, Minnesota, that she operated and ran the business of. So she just took no prisoners. And, what would be now described as a tiger mom. That was my mom. My mom used to say, "Bobby, you could be president of the United States if you just apply yourself." Right? So we don't raise kids like that anymore. We have a lot of parents. "Do you like me? I love you, darling. Do you like me? Do you like mommy? Do you like daddy?" And I'm never like that. I tell my kids all the time, nobody gives a fuck. Get out of my office. And I raised pretty emotionally resilient, independent kids. And so when your kids are 22 and they move back home and they won't leave and they won't get a job, understand that you didn't raise an emotionally resilient, independent child. Right? My older son, he was kind of going through some hard times in 1920, and I just cut him a deal. I said, "I'll help you with your rent, and then I don't want to hear you whine." Right? Because I figure if you got a place to live, fucking shut up about everything else. And he did, and he built a magnificent life for himself. If I would have let him move home,
do you have grandkids?
Easier,
you have grandkids?
I have one grandkid. I have a
congratulations!
kid. I have a 3-year-old kid and a 1-year-old grandkid.
That's awesome. Dude.
That's my grandson's up behind the plants up there. And that's who, we went to the Hollywood Bowl together, then to the Rolling Stones, most of us together. And it's just amazing that I set out in my own when I was 17. I've never asked anybody, my family, for anything. I've never looked back. I've been homeless. I've been a millionaire. I've been home, down to the ground again and rebuilt. Our business burned down in 2019 in the Woolsey fire. I was the one cheering us all on, like, "Fuck this. We're going to fucking survive this." Every other rehab in Malibu did not survive it. Malibu rehabs went, I think there was 28 before the fire. Now there's only 8.
Wow.
Right? It's hard to rebuild. Malibu was burned to the ground. Does everybody know that? It was burnt to the fucking ground.
If you live in California,
Huh?
If you live in California, Bob, I got a question for you. Do you know who Byron Katie is?
I've heard the name Katie. I don't know why. What is it from?
Because she has this. It's just interesting. She has one of her. She's like a. She's married to Stephen Mitchell, who did the translation of the Tao Te Ching, like the pocket edition, really famous translation for the Tao Te Ching. Anyway, she has this whole thing that she goes through to help people work through their shit. But she has this one line, and I bet you've heard it before. Who would you be without that story?
Right.
You ask people that. And I just wish so many people would, like, the other day, I just used it on my kid the other day, who's 7, and he fucking got it. He had some excuse for something. And I said, who would you be without that story? And like starting to explain to people like, hey man, you're telling yourself of the fucking victim story.
Right. The victim story doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah. And you can be somewhere without that story.
And I wish victims would speak out more post victim hoopla. Right. So what they don't understand is
you mean like when they dropped the story and they got past
it?
Oh, I'm not gonna. Yeah.
Oh, it'd be so much. I know it would take a lot of courage. And you'd have to overcome some sense of embarrassment or holding on to that you were right and the other person was wrong. But how do we have forgiveness and how do we have healing if we don't have truth and honesty? Right. Everybody asks me like, well, especially parents, I deal with hundreds and thousands of parents all the time. And they ask me like, what's really the missing ingredient? And I said, if I had to say anything that America is lacking is forgiveness and redemption. There's no way to be forgiven or redeemed. And I'm in the redeeming business. I think no matter how far down you've gone, you can be of benefit to someone else having gone through that experience. I've counseled people who have been responsible for the death of other people. I've counseled people who have done just horrible atrocities. I counseled somebody that was a part of multiple deaths there in Oakland. I don't know if you remember that event. And the thing is, we're living in a retribution society rather than a redemptive society. Like, and if we want retribution all the time, it's never going to fucking end.
I wonder what Trump's. Did you yesterday? Trump said that the being shot at. A lot of people don't even believe. A lot of people believe it was staged, but he says that being shot at has changed him, and that he's going to campaign on peace, love, and unity. Did you hear that?
Oh, well, I know his
Speaking
wife.
Of forgiveness,
his wife said that.
His wife said that?
She released a statement of that. Yeah, this whole thing of things didn't happen, Sandy Hook didn't happen, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. That's just part of the lack of forgiveness and understanding.
Like tie the two together for me. Explain it to me. Yeah. A lot of people are saying like, "Hey, it was staged." I'm like, "What the fuck do you mean it was staged?" Like he's like, "Hey, shoot my ear."
Well, yeah.
I'm like, man, that sounds like they don't even do that shit at Cirque du Soleil.
But conspiracies and all this kind of nonsense. You ever tried to have a real secret between 3 or 4 people? It's impossible.
Yeah.
How do they think they're keeping this child-eating pizza parlor thing under wraps?
Well, the thing is even if you tell them, the thing is now we've reached a point where you can even tell people the truth and they still won't. Like there's this picture I always show of this 16-year-old boy who weighs 400 pounds. And CNN writes and he's so fat you can't see his ears. And CNN says, healthy boy who took all the precautions dies of COVID. And like, you can see with your eyes, with your own discernment, that that's not true, but yet people believe it.
We're told false things all the time, clickbait and this sort of thing.
But even if you see something, I can tell you I'm going left, and even if I'm going right, half the people will be like, no, I believe what you say, not what I'm seeing.
Right.
It's
and
bizarre.
that's just lack of competitive thinking. You're not taught to think for yourself anymore. You're taught to think in group think and what is right think, and you're indoctrinated into thinking. And none of my kids are going to go to college. None of them. They don't need to. Fuck that. You can learn all. Here's the thing. And this is the thing a friend of mine has been saying about education for 20 years. In the age of technology, you can go to some dumbass Cal State and hear a guy who's burnt out, who had a passion for science, talk about the Big Bang Theory. Or you can just watch the guy who thought of the theory on a video and really take it in. Right. Go watch Stephen Hawking talk about it. You don't need to go park in a parking lot and be a part of some Cal system and be brainwashed into this thinking, this mob thinking, and this small-mindedness. I don't mind going anywhere if we can have a constructive conversation about it, right? You can't have constructive conversations with people who don't think. You can't.
Right.
So Gaza, for instance, I say, one of the biggest atrocities that ever was on my lifetime on the American public was the invasion of Iraq. We killed 2 million Iraqi civilians. The United States of America. We should have no say in what other people fucking do. And where were all those kids when we were killing Iraqi children? Fuck you. You know what I mean?
And they never found, and they told us it was for weapons of mass destruction, which they never found. Is that the?
They knew it. They wanted to get a hold of that piece of land that even Alexander the Great wanted a part of that piece of land. He failed. Alexander the Great couldn't conquer that region. A bunch of dumbasses that enrolled in the army to get out of the inner city are not going to be able to come up with a solution for that. And people who are willing to die. Like I always switch the thing. If Iraq invaded Southern California, would I die for Southern California? Yes. I'd die for my family. I'd do anything I could to keep these occupiers and these destroyers of my place where I was born, my children were born. I would do anything. And then we're shocked that they're blowing us up over there with IUDs? Are you fucking kidding me? What if they came to Santa Cruz? What if they came and invaded our country? Right. No one thinks like that. There's no critical thinking. Right. I understand why they did what they did.
Right.
We invaded a sovereign nation. Does the word sovereign mean anything to the United States government, or only when it benefits the United States government? I always say this great thing that I said last night to my father-in-law. America is the greatest country that I believe in the Western European evolution. It's the greatest, most free country. It's where jazz was invented. It was where you could be born into the most disenfranchised poverty and become the most successful in your lifetime. You can't do that in India. You're born into a fucking caste system that means you just do that for the rest of your life. You know what I mean?
Hey, there's a comedian who's like, hey, how can you say the United States is racist? It's the least racist country in the world. The whole premise of France is that it's racist. The whole premise of Armenia is that it's racist. The whole premise of India is that it's racist.
This is a melting pot.
Like, listen, you motherfuckers, don't talk shit about us.
The United States government is separate from the United States people.
Well, that's not good.
It is a separate entity. And this goes back to, Dwight D. Eisenhower on his leaving of office tried to warn the American public. And he was a Republican, by the way. You need to be very, very conscious of the military-industrial complex.
I think Nixon warned it on his way out, too.
Yeah. And now we're just like, we love, the Stars and Stripes Forever, war. And it's just awful. And this propaganda that obviously came from Iran, and China wants to mix it up with our population, but Iran, Saudi Arabia, that's what's been propagandized on college campuses. Like, these people are being sold a bag of goods, and certainly what's happening in Gaza is awful. I'm not denying that. It's awful. Why don't we worry about the awful we do? Right? Why don't we hold our elected officials accountable for the awful we do?
Well, they can't even protect Trump, but they're sending $5 billion or $100 billion or $500 billion to Ukraine for security issues.
Right.
And I was tripping on that the other day. I'm like,
I think we're going to be in, I think it's, I saw him raise his fist and say fight. And I was like, that guy is going to be the next president of the United States. There's no doubt about that. And I think he knew it. He's such a huckster. He knew what he did in that moment mattered. And most politicians wouldn't. They wouldn't. They would
have grabbed a baby and hid behind it.
Yeah. But so now what does that look like? And what happens to?
Uh-oh. You think his phone died, or he got a phone call? Put in your bets now. His phone died, or he got a phone call? I think its battery died. So there's this test, that DNA for addiction test, and Sarah sent one over to Taylor, and he's going to take the test. And you think Kristen thinks Trump chubbed up when he got shot. Um, uh, um, Taylor's going to take the test and then get the results back, and we'll have Bob on, and we'll have Bob talk and Taylor talk. It's going to be wild. And I wonder if I can get Rich Froning to do it too, because I remember Rich Froning saying that he comes from a family with addiction, and that he thinks fitness is his kind of like supplement for addiction. All right. That's a good podcast. I think his phone died, Souza, which is kind of good because I have to pee so bad. I have a video of a fat guy fighting a guy in a wheelchair. Fat guy versus guy in a wheelchair. Who do you think wins? It's a great video. You ready? Here we go. For your viewing pleasure, brought to you by DNA for Addiction. Okay, here we go. You guys ready? Fat guy with a gun versus man in wheelchair. And they're off. Guy in wheelchair grabs for gun. Look at this. The struggle's real. He got his gun. Guy in wheelchair. Look at it. Look at it. Is that the guy wearing a bulletproof vest? That thing's crazy. Look, they're fighting. But finally he gives up. He's winded. Fat guy's winded. He's toast. Yeah, good job, Chief Nation. Fat guy tires out. Yep. Look at this guy. And then bam. Partner comes in and shoots him. Crazy, right? I'm going to give the victory to the guy in the wheelchair. Damn. Bob, oh, hi.
Hey, now, what happened? Something happened.
I think,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, did your phone die?
Something's going wrong. I don't know why.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah, you
Okay.
can hear me?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there for a second. Glitched.
Did your battery die in your phone?
No, it's working. Everything was working. I was seeing the thing you were putting up. Anyways, the point was that
Did you like the intermission? Did you like the intermission?
Yeah, that was intermission. So it's a bridge too far for me to go that way. I'm always thinking ahead, like what's next? What's coming? Is the independent movement going to rise up and kind of be something that is significant? This might be the thing that causes that. Everything evolves, everything is cause and effect. And, you know, and you have a huge part of the population is just so turned off by politics they don't even vote. What would get them re-engaged?
Right.
Maybe a three-party system, right?
God, something more than just a two-party system.
Yeah. But anyways, I just think it's always an exciting time to be alive if you pay attention.
Yes.
It's just, I love to say the internet's a great tool. It's wonderful. We're able to communicate like this, right? We're able to go see the first thing I ever saw on the internet. My son, we had gotten Earthlink, and my son Elijah hooked it up, and he was like 10 years old and a little tech whiz. And he said, he's sitting at the keyboard and he said, "Where do you want to go, Dad?" And this is the old days of the big, fat screen computer. And I said, the Deschamps exhibit at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And he typed it in, and we went there, and it was in a really most basic internet thing. This is 1996, 97. And we could go and see the greatest works of modern art, to me, nude descending a staircase, and just explore the world. You could go anywhere. I remember we would just sit there for hours going places on the internet and exploring what was available to you. It was so fascinating and amazing, right? That's why there was so much promise about what's to come from the internet, right? And everybody having it. And then it became a business tool, and then it became an educational tool. And now there's one component of it, which is social media, that is wholly destructive to civilization. It is destructive. I don't allow my children on it. I'm not on it. And guess what? I get all the news just the same. I get to keep up with my family members and friends. I know everything. Every reason people give for being on Facebook, I experience, and I'm not on Facebook. So, oh my God, it's possible to live without Facebook. Right. And so, and you just remove that from your life, and you really don't get brainwashed by how everything's staged or everything's a conspiracy, and you're not reading dumbasses' opinions about things. You're just free to explore conversations with people you find interesting, and spend more time with your children. You go to a restaurant and the kids are on devices and the parents are on devices, and it's just like, what the hell? Why'd you come out? You guys could have just stayed home.
Right.
I noticed that I talk to everybody wherever I go, the dry cleaners, or people in line at the supermarket or whatever. And more people are open to conversation. There was a time 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago where people were becoming closed. They'd be a little guarded, like, why is somebody talking to me? And I'm excited to know that people are more open, I think, post-COVID, to conversation.
Oh, good.
Right?
Yeah.
My mail lady, she doesn't abide by the rules because we live on a rural road and there's a box down at the end by the driveway. And if I'm driving by and she has a package that doesn't fit in the thing, and she's supposed to write a note, and I'm supposed to go to the post office, she'll just say, Bob, and I'll stop, and she goes, I got a package that doesn't fit in the compartment. That kind of community, I don't think millennials know.
Right.
I don't think they do.
Right.
That the mail lady actually breaks the law to be more loving and kind and helpful to me and my family, that we don't have to go down to the post office and wait in line to pick up a box. That, by the way, what was that box? Would you like to know?
Yes.
It's an autographed basketball by Gail Goodrich, one of the Los Angeles Lakers.
Oh, wow. You ordered it?
I bought it on eBay. I do this thing on eBay where I bid on really cool shit, the lowest bid, and then I forget about it. And
I didn't even know eBay was still around.
Yeah, eBay. I won an autographed basketball by Gail Goodrich, the guard on the 72 Lakers that are the greatest basketball team in history, with Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain. Wow. I got an autographed ball by Gail Goodrich, and that was the package that didn't fit in the thing. And I think that when I hear young people say they don't care if they live or die, it's one of the saddest things. And I know that the pessimism that social media creates in people is part of it. It's a component of it. And so it's easy. My kids aren't allowed to be on it. It's really effing easy, right? I'm in charge of my kids until they turn 18. They're not allowed to be on it. Some parents would be like, well, like, no, there's no reason to be on it.
Ken Walters, I buy 500 items a month. No, I sell 500 items a month on eBay. Wow. Oh, and he also said he'll buy your basketball from you if you want to sell it.
I'm a big sports fan. We didn't get into that. I don't know why. It's obviously childhood trauma. I watched that Argentina soccer game last night, and I was rooting for Colombia. You know what? Historically, Americans don't really know that much about football, which is the passion sport of the world. Of course, Americans aren't interested in it because we're not interested in the world. But 30 years ago, Colombia lost the World Cup, and the goalie led a penalty kick, I believe. I don't know the exact details, but when he got back to Colombia, they murdered him. Pablo Escobar, or the drug cartel. They murdered him. So I was joking with my kids last night. These guys have to win. They're going to get killed if they go back there and they don't win. and my daughter started believing it. Really? They're going to die if they, because she loves Messi and she was rooting for Argentina. I was like, no, said it was a long time ago. Pablo Escobar killed him as dad, and it's a different world back then. And, but I was rooting for Colombia because that's that kind of redemption,
Yeah, that's what I was
that,
thinking. Who
you
won?
know, Argentina did.
Oh.
Martinez got a goal in the overtime period, and it was sad. Like those poor Colombians, but at least they don't have to worry about being murdered when they go back to Colombia.
It doesn't happen anymore.
No,
No. Oh.
there's no cocaine anymore. It's all fentanyl and meth created here in the United States with, man-made products that are making people insane, killing people.
Bob, would you be willing to come back on and as someone
Sure.
opens a test and we talk to them about their results? And
I'd love to. Yeah. So let's wrap up about the test. It's
okay.
a tool. It's a tool, and it can give you a little insight about yourself, and you can use it to talk to your kids. That's what I truly believe. Right?
Yep.
Can you hear me, or did it cut out?
Nope.
Yeah.
I hear you. There.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the website.
I really believe it's a tool. Is it going to solve your problem? No. You're going to solve your problem. I say that to every client. I've had probably 20,000 clients in my lifetime. I always say, you have the solution inside you. Inside you is the solution. The problem is you are the problem too. So I'm here as a third party to kind of battle with you within you, help you battle logic and reason and impulses and compulsives and anxiety and depression. I'm here as your ally for you to fight you. And once you overcome that and conquer this inner kind of turmoil you have, you're then going to go help somebody else conquer that turmoil. And it's the most powerful thing to watch. I have clients that no one wanted to even talk to that now have dedicated their lives to helping people get off drugs. Ironically, it's usually the worst of the worst that end up helping. I don't know what that's about.
That's awesome.
I was pretty much one of the worst of the worst. That I'll tell you two interesting things. Shane MacGowan is one of the wildest, craziest addict legends in music. He just passed away last year. His funeral he was held in whatever, like he was a political figure in Ireland. Like he sat in, what is it called? Where Kennedy sat after his assassination, where the whole country mourned Shane MacGowan's death, the whole country of Ireland. And he was a friend of mine, and they were doing an intervention on him, and I happened to be with him at the time, and it was really it was really not a wonderful place to be. A bunch of people walk in, including Shane's wife and some friends, and we're drinking at 11 o'clock in the morning, and they're doing an intervention on him, and I'm in the room, and I'm trying to get out of the room, but I can't get out, and I'm just drunk and high, and at that intervention, Shane said, "So this is one of those things where you want me to go to a hospital and get off drugs?" And his wife said, "Yeah." And he goes, could really use that is Bob.
Oh shit.
And the whole room, who hated me to begin with, looked at me like, holy fuck. And so I'm one of the few people that thought Shane MacGowan thought I was worse than him. That's legendary worse. Doesn't get much crazier and worse than us. And the second thing was,
really quick,
I heard that
someone in the comments asked, what's the website? It's DNA number 4 addiction. Here, I'll put it in the
yeah.
Okay, so what's
and
the
you can get
thing?
the test, and you can see if you're sensitive to light and sound. It may explain some things for you, and you can kind of use it as a tool with your kids. So the second one was, so years later after I get sober, somebody says to me, everybody, we kind of had a poll one night, and I was like, what about? And he goes, I hate to tell you. And I said, what? And he goes, it was and he named all the people, 6 or 8 friends of ours. And it was morbid and it's dark, and I'm not proud of it, but we did kind of bet which of you was going to die, more likely to die first, Anthony or you. And I was like, what? So friends of ours sat around one night getting drunk, and the subject of me and Anthony came up, and they decided to poll who they thought of the two of us was going to die first, the highest. and it was 6-2 me.
Wow. Is that right too,
And
though? Do you think that they got it right? Were you more likely to die than him?
I don't know. We're
Oh.
both alive. So
Oh.
then I tell Anthony that, and he's like, there's a lot of this, and he was wanting to know the people, and I don't know the people that were there. I know 2 of them, and they're still alive. And he's like, I bet you some of the people that said one of us is going to die are dead.
Yeah. Hey, knowing you, you were probably excited you won. You're like, yes,
I won.
I won.
So yeah, use the DNA for addiction as a tool, and it explains a lot. I
Bob,
mean,
if you find any other people who you think, I don't need to mean to say that they're famous, but that people would be interested on whether, and they'd be willing to take the test and come on here.
yeah,
I'd like to do a bunch of those. I'd like to just
yeah,
see
I'd
how
like to do
people
a bunch of.
react and navigate. And I think it could be a fun little YouTube series. You know, they have this YouTube series where they take someone famous and they give them the hottest hot wings in the world and they eat it.
Yeah, I
And then
saw
they
that.
ask, this would be a cool one just to be like, you know, have someone on and Taylor, you know, this guy Taylor, who's famous in the CrossFit community. If his test comes up positive, he can be like, yeah, you know, and he's very open. He'll be like, yeah, my dad was a drug addict and I used to be in rehab. And we can kind of, and there can be a discussion that you could have with him that other people then could benefit from. We can talk about how to navigate it, what he should tell his kids. He may have questions for you. It could be a really cool series.
Right, I'd love to do it. You know,
Yeah.
I just saw that Hot Wings one that Billie Eilish was on there the other day and was all flirting with the girl that was hosting it.
No.
Did you see that? I was
No.
I see everything. See, because I don't have social media, everyone sends me everything via text. They're like, did you see this? Because
that's
they're
cool.
trying to fill me in on all this stuff I'm missing out on, not being on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And
I just found out who Billie Eilish was. I was interviewing someone about 6 months ago, and I'd never heard of Billie Eilish. I thought it was an actress, but I guess she's a singer. And I listened to like 2 of her songs, and it was the first time in my life I felt suicidal. I'm like, wow, this is tough.
Well, that's a whole new movement. Like she's pretty well rounded. She has depressing songs, but there's a whole movement of extension, X extension, Little Peep, Juice World. All their music is so depressing. It's like they talk about suicide constantly, and 3 of them are dead.
Wow.
Like Little Peep was like a kind of an originator of this new kind of music. It was very depressing, very self-pitying, very slow, very soft, very melodic, kind of to a hip-hop beat. And he died of a drug overdose on his tour bus in Tucson, Arizona at 21 years old. Ooh. This has got to stop, man. This fucking celebration of stupidity and death has got to stop. And the way you do it is little by little conversations, little, you know, I have kids tell me, well, I don't think life's worth living without drugs. I said, how the fuck would you know? Right. That's an honest, how would you know? You suspect life isn't worth living without drugs. Why don't you be off drugs for a year or 2 and see if you still feel that way? Right? Creative conversations with people. It's important, man. Conversation is it's the lost art of America.
Are you training these days? Do you do any training these days? Speaking of,
I did take the training for nonviolent communication. It's another very interesting thing.
No,
I mean
physical training.
Oh no, I got 3 kids. I'm always going.
All right, good. Yeah.
I mean, I go.
Yeah, but, you look good. You didn't get fat while the rest of America got fat. Good on you.
No, well, I talked about it in my last podcast. I think I sent it to you. So I went on a health kick. Kind of, I don't know, when I get a little chubby, I go on a health kick, and I ate right. I'm 63.
No, how tall?
Oh, 5'11" I was, but now I'm down to 5'10". I was 186 now, and I got down to 174. Right?
Wow.
So
that's skinny. That's good.
But I have all the drops, like the chili peppers are big health nuts and drops, and I did stem cells for a long time, and I'm really, you know, like curious about everything. I'm curious about that. So, but then I'm lazy too. So I do all the drops. I'm eating right. I'm not eating what the kids eat, and I'm doing it, and I really get healthy. I start getting up in the morning. You feel different when you eat healthy. You just do. Yeah. You just feel strong and different. And then I'm just lazy and I just fall off. And then the drops are time consuming. You know about drops, like all the different. No. Do you know Khalil that does Sun Life Organics?
No.
he's a kind of a famous nutritionist to the stars or whatever. He has a great book. I helped him get sober, and he became a like this fitness nut, but mostly he has health food stores and nutrition for
Is he a
people. So
doctor?
no, but he's obsessed with, like, he's the first person that told me about turmeric. I was
Oh,
drinking turmeric like 10 years ago because I have all these broken bones and stuff, and inflammatory. As you get older, you need anti-inflammatories. Stem cells do really good with that for 90 days, and then you're back to where you were. But I have access, and I have cupboards full of shit that Sun Life Organics has given me. And so I went on this kick and I got healthy. And as soon as I started to feel healthy, that addict in me, that dummy in me, that baby in me, that antisocial in me just says, well, let's get some Thrifty's cotton candy ice cream. Let's get some of that because you're healthy now. I do it every time.
is
For,
did you say Sun Life Organics? They're out of Malibu.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're everywhere. He moved to Austin, Texas. They're in Austin, Texas. They're in Denver, Colorado. They're everywhere. But he also gives me all the stuff that he's coming up with. Like he has some of the greatest natural drinks. You know, anyways, so I can be healthy. I know how to be healthy, and I have the resources to be healthy. They're in my cupboards. But it's just so time consuming. Like, if you got to get your kids to school at 8 o'clock, and then you got to be at work when you come back at 9, the 20 minutes it takes to blend everything and do all that, I'm not disciplined enough to do it. And I apologize to all your listeners who are. I'm in awe of you, but I do pretty good. Just kind of trying
Yeah,
to
you
eat
look
right.
good. You look good, dude. You're not fat. I mean, that's huge. You got great hair. That's huge.
I didn't plan on living this long, and here I am, still relatively healthy. The other thing is about how slow people walk. Like, I'm a fast walker because I don't know why. I just feel like walking, we got to get there. And I'm so fascinated by how people it just seems like cows in a field just walking and grazing. And I'm not even talking about weight or whatever. They're just so kind of lost in their walking, just doing nothing. And I'm always like zigzagging in and around them. Like, what the hell are you fucking taking so long for? And I realize the world's just not wired like me anymore. And it's fun because I am. And I always tell kids, if you're wired like me, if you're like wild and passionate for everything and madness and whatever, you're going to lap these people because these people just waddle along. They don't even know what they want in life. If you know what you want in life, if you know your purpose, you're doubly, triply likely to succeed at it because there's so many lops in the world now. Used to be everybody was like that, so it was hard. Competition was hard.
Right. Right.
You had to outdo, and everything was really, fight for the brass ring and stuff because everybody wanted the brass ring. I think like 2/3 of the population doesn't even know there's a brass ring. They don't even know it. They're just like blah 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 blah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wake up, be here now. Wake up. So be here now is the Sun Life Organics logo. I think it's probably on that thing. And John Lennon said it, but it's actually a Ram Dass saying. And so I said it to Khalil, and then all of a sudden I go into Sun Life in Malibu, and there's T-shirts that say "Be Here Now," and I say, "Are you going to give Ram Dass commission on that, or John Lennon's estate, or me?" Because you never heard that term "Be Here Now."
I'll never
Be here
forget.
now.
Do you remember the first person who showed you this book? I'll never forget someone gave me this book in my, I was 22, and I've probably given away 20 copies of this book in my life.
Right.
Do you remember who gave you your first copy?
I think it was this guy named Jose Garcia. My friend Luis's older brother had it, and he's the one that told me to get it. But
what an awesome book, huh?
Yeah, but then I went into a deep rabbit hole for a couple of years with Buddhism, and I had a teacher named Shenzhen Yang, and inevitably I got down the road so far with Buddhism and meditation. I really started to understand the concept of non-attachment
And I had to be honest. My goal is not non-attachment. I like attachment. I think the human condition part of it is compulsed to attach, love and be loved. So I just felt like a fraud the more I went down, and you get pious about how long you can sit and how straight up you can sit. And the whole spiritual thing in America is very, there's a dangerous edge to it where you're just spiritually bragging. You know what I mean? I see Russell Brand. I see Russell Brand walk that line when I watch him. It's hard to not be arrogant when you're really disciplining yourself at a tremendous thing. I would meditate 3 hours a day, 3 times a day, 1 hour a day, sitting upright, right? And it's hard, like when you see everybody else, like, all they got to do is like wish it and it comes true, and you're trying to live a disciplined life. But I really realized it helped me a lot calm down and center myself. But at the end, it wasn't something that I desired. I love this world that we've created as human society. I love it. I love movies and books and knowledge and power and interesting and how to love and be loved. I'm fascinated by all the things that are attachment. So why should I practice a spirituality that's hypocritical?
I like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I like what around that thought. I like what Eckhart Tolle says around stuff like that. By the way, he called the pandemic the so-called pandemic. He was the only guru that I saw in the whole world. Marianne Williamson, Deepak Chopra, all those stoic fucktards. They all fucking listened to their mind and ran with the fear. None of them actually practiced what they preach. But Tolle did. But Tolle would say this around what you said. If you're attached, can you accept the fact that you're attached? And it's like, that sounds more like where you're at. Like, hey,
right.
It's at the next level is in a form of acceptance, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you're at. You're at your acceptance.
Yeah. Just knows to thine own self be true. Right. Meaning I know me, I'm not anxious. I'm not depressed. I like getting up in the morning. I don't blame other people for my problems.
Yeah.
If you can just get to that place, and was I like this always? No, but you can get to a place of, and I think age has something to do with it. I think that you get wiser with age. I think
you can.
Knowing
I think many
things,
get more stubborn, but
they get fixed and well, they get disappointed. A lot of my friends get disappointed. Like, I don't have any expectations a lot of times, so I don't get disappointed. Right? I did when I was flying high, and I kind of was doing economically the best I had done in a long time in the late 2000s. I became kind of depressed. Like, it didn't seem like it was a full and abundant life. Yeah, I could go anywhere and do anything, and I was single, and I didn't have to like account to anybody, and I could do whatever I wanted. It wasn't that I didn't know how to use the abundance that was given me, but it wasn't fulfilling. So I came back down to earth. I moved back to Los Angeles, and I ended up falling in love and kind of creating this kind of interesting world that everyone my age said, "Oh my God, I can't imagine what it's like to have kids at your age." And I said, "Well, then that's why you shouldn't have kids at our age." But me, I love it. I'm a better parent now than I was 30 years ago, for fucking sure.
I have two 7-year-olds and a 9-year-old. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. I'm moving a lot physically. It's a lot of work, but I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think that it's not for everybody, and you'll get a lot of criticism from people. My wife's much younger than me or whatever. I know this is a horrible subject. You know that this interesting statistic came up. My wife has a master's degree in education, so it's just like, she gets really offended when people talk about our 20-year age gap or whatever, but I don't. It's like, whatever. People have opinions about every fucking thing.
Right.
But 60, this is a crazy statistic. You can look it up. 60% of millennial males report being single. Only 30% of millennial females report being single.
Oh, wow.
And so statistically, how does that work?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about within an 18-year age bracket.
Yeah.
It's because a lot of smart millennials are dating people who are older than them because you can't live at your boyfriend's parents' house.
Right.
but I remember like somebody saying, "What explains this, Bob?" And I said, "I think it's pretty self-explanatory. They're not dating people 8 years old, so they're dating people older than the 18-year generation gap."
I think it shows a
Right?
smart woman who dates an older man.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we talk about it like, you know, I think I got 20 solid good years left. I have an energy that very few 63-year-olds have. But you know, there's a finite, you know, age catches up
Sure.
with everybody. So 20 years, she'll be
Does Bob
50,
want another wife?
no. Listen to this though. When I'm 80, she'll be 59, right?
Yeah.
I was like, well, you might take everything we've got and go have fun. Like, just go have fun and be free. And she's
Yeah.
like, I think it'll be over for me by then.
Hey, Bob, could you hold on 1 minute? I have to pee.
Yeah.
Do you have to pee?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay, I'm going to pee. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to play a little commercial.
My name's Josue Bocanegra. I'm originally from Mexico. I'm 27 and I go to Salty Life CrossFit. When I came in here, I was 195, almost 200 pounds, and I had never been that heavy, like ever. And then I got in here, started eating well. You know, we have the consistency is key. That's always, like, I don't know, like ever since I heard it here, like it was always in my head. And it didn't just apply to the gym, it applied to my eating habits, to my workouts, to even like just work, school. Consistency is key. So I started eating healthier, started avoiding sugars, I started avoiding candy because I love candy. I try to avoid it as much as possible, and I'm now 169 pounds this morning actually. And I don't feel skinny either. It's like I'm actually fit, which is awesome, you know? I think it's the most fit I've ever been in my entire life, regardless of playing soccer in high school. Actually trying for a while to get my dad in here because he's struggled with obesity throughout his life. What I tell him all the time is like, you got to get in here because it's not just the gym. It's not just you get in there and people may be just judging you for what you're doing. No, it's a community. It's somewhere where they'll help you actually improve and not just lose weight and actually get strong and actually get fit. And it's so much more than a gym. That's what I tell him.
Oh, I'm relieved.
How are you relieved?
Oh,
man. I just got a news report. So there was a mom here in Southern California in Canoga Park, was a fentanyl addict. She left some fentanyl out and her twin 3-year-old toddlers ingested it. One of them died at the scene. This happened 4 days ago. I just got a news report. The second child died. She's being charged with murder. Her life is over. She's an, looks like upper middle class or middle class working mom. Her life is over.
City? What city?
Canoga Park.
And she's probably going to be 3-year-old dies after suspected drug overdose.
Yeah, now the second child just died a few minutes ago. This is happening in America every day. Kids, toddlers ingesting the drugs their parents leave around.
Oh my God.
And I can tell you a story. So when I was 4 years sober, you have there's emotional release points, I call them. People call them high risk relapse things. I just think there's emotional, it's, if you're an onion in sobriety and you're peeling yourself and you're getting to deeper layers, a lot of times that process is very exciting and pain-free, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's devastating and painful. And there are certain events where you discover things about yourself. This is something about my family. I just felt like it went through an 8-month period of time where I was seeing just the hypocrisy and everything and how full of shit my mom was. And like, I was angry. And so we just call it peeling the onion, right?
Uh-huh.
But there's the high risk. It tends to be at the 4 and 5 year point in sobriety of relapse. A lot of people, if you can get sober and get on the other side of it and get a good groove going on, you pretty much sail along. And it's called the pink cloud, and people just like are so excited. Those are the people that proselytize sobriety so much to other people. They're so excited about it. Everything has been great. Everything's going right. Inevitably, life and your trauma catches up with you, right? So I went through this period where I got so dark that it led to the best part of my life and why we're here right now. But it got really dark, and my son told me that he swears he didn't say he hated me, but I think he did. But it was so emotional between he and I. We were living together, and he was going out on his own, and he was turning 15, and he was like, fuck you all the time to me. And it was real intense. Probably what happens right nowadays at like 18, 19, 20, it happened with my son when he was 15. He would not come home at night. He's like, I'm an adult. I don't account to you. And just like really having problems with him, which the relationship with him was such a big part of my sobriety to gain custody of him and be a sober dad and all this. And now we're butting heads constantly. So there was that. I had an easement argument with my neighbor. Like we had a shared driveway, but her part of her property, this in Echo Park, is a 150-year-old area of Los Angeles. And her part of her property, she couldn't get to her garage and driveway. They had cemented it up, but mine I could. And we had this argument over the driveway for years. And finally, I just went to court and got I applied for easement that the driveway was mine because she couldn't access her thing. And it was a war, and it was a petty, stupid thing I did. And she reported my house to the building inspectors. And my house was built in 1888. So it really wasn't up to Los Angeles specs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my home was condemned.
Oh shit! While you were living in it?
While I was living in it, until it got all this repairs done and this earthquake proofing and all this kind of stuff. So I invited it myself, fucking arguing with my neighbor like a selfish asshole. My son tells me he hates me and wants to move back to his mom's house. And then my long-term relationship that I had high and in my music career, we had gotten sober together and been together for years. I'd alienated her, and she left me for another guy, a French guy too, to top it all off.
That's barely a man. That's barely a guy. French guys are barely a guy. She turned lesbian. She turned lesbian.
So I lost my relationship. My son told me he hated me, and my house was condemned. So it was a dark time in my life. You got to understand.
Yeah.
So I kind of stopped going to meetings, stopped talking to everybody, just sat, didn't take a shower, didn't really do anything, watch television. And I eventually broke, and I went and bought drugs. I bought heroin and crack cocaine. I brought it home. I was 4.5 years sober, and I brought it home, and I was sitting there, and I took the heroin out, and I hadn't done heroin in 5 years, and it just smelled awful. And I just couldn't do it. Inevitably, I couldn't follow through with it. So I took the heroin balloon, and I kind of crinkled it back into the plastic, and I went out my back door, and I just threw it in the backyard to get it out of my house. And then I crushed up the crack and flushed it down the toilet. And then inevitably, I had told somebody in AA that I'd gotten high or I was going to get high. And a bunch of my friends came over to my house later that night, like 8 or 9 o'clock. I bought the drugs about 4. And they're like, and my friend Alexis, like, where is it? And I was like, I threw it in the backyard. Like, what are you guys doing? I felt put upon, but I also felt loved. Do you know that feeling?
Right. Yeah. Right.
Put upon, embarrassed, but loved and cared about.
Yeah.
So we're going to the backyard, and we're looking for the heroin that I turned in the backyard. I turned the lights on. We got flashlights and trying to find it to get rid of it and throw it away or whatever. And then I look over and I had a German Shepherd dog, and it was unconscious.
Oh shit.
My dog had eaten the heroin.
Wow.
And overdose. And I was like, Bella, her name was. I loved a band called Bella and Sebastian. I had one dog named Sebastian, one dog named Belle. And I was, Bella, get up. And she's just, her tongue's hanging out. She was breathing, but her tongue's hanging out. Her eyes are rolling back in her. So I pick her up, and she's a big fucking 90-pound German Shepherd. And I carry her to my car, and I go to this emergency. I know pet hospitals because Flea worked in the pet hospital, actually. There's a pet hospital, pretty far from my house that's open 24 hours. And I go to this hospital. I'm walking in, and I'm realizing, like, what do I tell them?
Yeah. What did you tell him?
My dog, I said my dog ingested some prescription drugs.
Oh, yeah.
And they flushed her stomach and they got her, like, she stayed overnight. But so she ate a 1/4 gram of heroin. She was 90-pound dog and she didn't die. And she had probably been high. She had probably ingested it hours before, right? And the reason I tell this story is a 1/4 gram of heroin couldn't kill a 90-pound dog. A tiny little speck of fentanyl can kill 2 children.
Wow.
It's a dangerous time right now in drugs in America. It's a dangerous time. And this woman's been charged with murder. I don't know. We get so uppity about like what we're going to punish people for, like distracted driving and parents whose children die. She's already been sentenced to death.
Oh yeah, her life's over, right?
Her life's over. You really want to put her in prison for 20 years on top of that? I don't know.
Hey, she's only 22.
I know. It's just fucking devastating, man. So what we need to do is make more moms and dads aware that if they got fentanyl around the house, fucking put it away, keep it safe, keep it locked away, just the same way we do about guns.
A 2-year-old in Lancaster died from being exposed to fentanyl just earlier in the year. Damn.
It's happening everywhere. So, these drugs are deadly. They couldn't kill a 90-pound German Shepherd in 2001, but they can kill 2 kids who probably ingested just the tiniest amount. And now this woman's life is over. So people beware. Fentanyl is, I made some shirts that became very popular. It says, fuck fentanyl. I'm pretty direct about things with marketing. Yeah. Like, fuck fentanyl. And I wear it, and my daughter is like, are you really going to wear that shirt? And I was like, yeah, sometimes you need to beat people over the head with something. Fuck fentanyl.
Mike Olivas, pool boy. I met a French dude at a CrossFit gym I visited in Sydney. I won't lie, his accent gave me an erection. Fair enough. I'm glad you got that off your chest.
Yeah, I'm telling you. How about this? How weird my life is. I am like Zelig or some weird. I love life because I'm curious of what's going to happen next. Right. Years later, that guy was married to a girl, not my ex, who established a drug problem. My ex called me and said, hey, is there any way you would talk to so-and-so? And I was like, sure. And I talked to him and I helped him get his wife cleaned. So, forgiveness, wow. People. Yeah. Fucking forgiveness.
Heidi has a good question. Is the dog a drug addict now?
No, but we can get the DNA for addiction test. She was a German Shepherd. She passed at about 9 years old. It's sad with German Shepherds and their hips and stuff like that, and they can't get up. And she had that. She was big. She was a big German Shepherd. But I always have dogs. I got one now called Snowball. How about the fact that I got kids? They all want to get a dog. I said, what kind of dog? They said a bulldog because they saw a bulldog on TV or something. We get a bulldog. No one likes the bulldog. So then it becomes it's named Peppa Pig, right? And Peppa Pig, nobody played with it. I felt sad for her. Just kind of wander around, this big husky bulldog. And bulldogs can't be outside that much in Southern California because it's too hot. They get really bad. So he's in the house a lot, and in the kennel, and it's just sad. So then my older son Elijah took Peppa because nobody liked it. So then we decided, we had a family meeting. We're going to get a real dog, and we go and get this dog. Me and my daughter, she loved it. Rambunctious 2-year-old dog, got it at the pound. And then it's too wild and nobody likes that dog. Now it's just my dog. I always end up with the dogs.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. That's part of having kids. The
cats I don't have to take care of. The cats I don't. The fish tanks, I'm responsible for the fish tanks, the cat boxes, and the dog. Not bad for a house filled with animals.
Yeah. Bob, I
Yeah.
can't wait to have you on again. I can't wait to get this
Yeah, I
test
love to
out.
come on. I love talking about this stuff.
Okay,
You know,
fantastic.
and I'll tell you this, and I
Please.
heard it at an AA meeting. We're not telling you to change your orbit. Just change one tiny little thing and it will change everything. One tiny little thing and it will change everything. You know, people think change is this big, monstrous, scary thing. No, we're just asking you to change one little thing. Don't take fentanyl, right? Don't eat tons of sugar.
Right. Yep.
Tiny little thing, Russ. Don't
Yep.
smoke.
Yep.
Right? And it changes everything over time. You start orbiting like a different planet.
You
Little
could
bit of change.
And you could even do this: wake up 1 hour earlier, go to bed 2 hours earlier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sleep is a big one.
Well, and you can just write people's lifestyle. People who go to bed earlier probably have it's probably a first step to like not doing bad things. People smoke more at night, eat more shit at night, probably do more drugs at night, probably drink more alcohol at night. So even just
For
like
sure.
just along those lines of changing things, like, hey, if you can just change something and get a new habit in your life.
Read a couple pages of a book, and the last thing I'll say is, as I got older, I got tired in the middle of the day, and I felt ashamed of napping. Don't be ashamed of napping. I nap every day between 3 and 4 or 4 and 5 every day. It's a time of the day when nobody needs me for anything.
Yep, I'm a big napper. Me too. 20 minutes a day.
Love you, Bob. Talk to you soon, brother.
Day. Bob Forrest, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, dude.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, talk to you very soon. Man with a wealth of experience and knowledge. He should probably be on for like 5 3-hour episodes. I wanted to talk more about the test, but there's so much we can talk about. I have to do this really quick. I have to call Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, I called and left a message last night. We don't have water at my house. Something's going on with my well and my pump. I looked at it. Everything looks fine, but I was wondering, could you send someone out today to take a look at it?
We cannot send anybody out today, unfortunately. We could maybe get somebody out there tomorrow.
Yeah, the sooner the better. Do you have any advice for me? Am I calling the right place? Is this the right place? That's your specialty?
Yes, you are. Sorry, I just wasn't the one who had listened to your message.
Oh, okay. Could I schedule a time for tomorrow?
What was the address that you're at?
It's hold on one second. Because we have no water in the house. You got to poop in the yard now. That's it. That was supposed to make you laugh. I'm glad it did. I'm just right up Old San Jose Road by the high school.
Okay, well, hold on for a second. I'm going to transfer you to my computer really quick.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, sorry. Long list of people that I'm trying to get through messages still this morning. We had a guy call out with an emergency this morning, and another guy who unfortunately broke his arm, so he's not going to be in for a while. So we're a little short-staffed.
Okay.
So I can try to get somebody out there tomorrow. We're just super short-staffed, so we're kind of running a little behind.
Okay. I don't want to. I've heard nothing but good things about you, but is there someone else I should call in town?
I really hate referring people out. But
okay, yeah, then don't do it. Then that's fine.
No, there's.
We just don't have water, you know, and it's just
water?
it's just crazy because we're on the well. We're on a well here out here.
Of course.
So, but my neighbor's like, dude, you got to call Capitola Pump. They're the best. So I can hang in one more day. I promise you I'll be a great customer. I'll pay the bills on time.
Well, I'd love to hear that. So I'd hate to lose you before we get started. So yeah, I'll do my best to try to get somebody out there tomorrow. If not Wednesday, if you think you can hold out that long.
Okay. All right. Should I call again tomorrow morning and double check?
You you can, I might have a better idea. I had one guy call out with an emergency dental appointment, so I should have 3 guys going tomorrow. We already have a couple of big jobs scheduled, but we might be able to squeeze you in.
Okay, and it might just be something simple. I mean, I have no idea.
It very well could be. What is actually going on?
Basically, we
The
just
pump's not working and no water.
yeah, just no water. I have no idea, but I took a look over at the at the pump, and my neighbor came over, and we looked at it, and everything looks fine over there. Then we went to the circuit breaker, everything looks fine over there, and then we went to the holding tank, and everything looks fine there. And we just basically watched YouTube videos, and he's on a well too, and he's a little more experienced, and we went through all the protocols for the equipment.
Or do you have water in the tank and it's not getting pressurized into the house?
I think that's what it is. Well, for sure, there's no pressure in the tank. The tank pressure says 0.
Okay, but do you have water going into your storage tank?
I don't know. I wouldn't even know how to check that.
Okay.
It's just a little. It's just a little tiny tank. It's not a big tank. It's probably like 40 or 50 gallons. It's tiny.
That sounds more like a pressure tank.
Okay,
So
then I don't even have a holding tank. I think it just goes straight from the well to the pressure tank. Could that be possible?
Very well could be.
Yeah, I think that's the way mine is set up.
That type of system is possible, so that might be something to consider.
Okay.
Getting a storage tank. It helps with fire, and then if you do have a no water situation like this, hopefully you would be able to get a little bit of water out of that while waiting for a service call. So that might be something to consider going forward. But I'll get this written up, and we'll do our best to get somebody out there as soon as we can.
Okay, my name is Sevon, and you have my message. Do you need any information from me now?
No, I think this is enough to get us going. Little Creek, that's Scotch Valley or Boulder Creek?
No, just out SoCal.
Oh, that's SoCal. Okay. Well, we'll get that written up, and we'll do our best to get somebody out there as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. You have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Fuck.
Hey.
I spoke to the pump people.
Oh yeah? Can they come today?
Some dude had an emergency dental issue. Another dude's like out sick.
No.
I'm gonna eat an HGR CBD gummy to help with my stress levels.
Okay, I'll take 5.
They can't get anyone out today, maybe tomorrow, but it doesn't sound good for tomorrow either.
Holy shit.
And she said we need a holding tank. They don't recommend
What do you
systems
mean?
that go straight from the well to the pressurized tank.
Oh, is that what Jim has?
All our neighbors have holding tanks.
Oh. Okay.
All right.
Should we move into a hotel? No! With a swimming pool.
Please don't swear around the kids. I don't want them to hear bad words.
Oh my God! You don't want them to hear bad words.
All right. At least we have electricity. Think positive.
I'd rather have water than electricity, but you're right. It would be worse to have both of them out.
Hey, I took a shit in the yard this morning.
Did you Feel like you're camping?
Kinda. I hope you don't see it. It's disgusting.
I don't like camping.
Is my mom there?
Well, we can live with McKenna.
No, McKenna's here. Your mom dropped off our towels, though.
All right.
She was here for a minute.
Don't all. Oh, okay. That was cool. I'm going to take the boys out to eat after McKenna. So I'll take.
All right. We're going to have to eat out a lot.
I know. All right.
Okay.
I just don't want to make a mess in the kitchen, then we can't clean it up. All right. I love you, baby.
Yeah.
All right.
They had some yogurt and stuff.
At least I'm super fit and healthy and I have a huge dick and I'm not a drug addict.
Yes, we have a lot going for us, don't we?
Yeah, as a family. All right.
Okay.
I'll think of some good things
Thank
that you have going
for having all those great qualities.
I'll think of some good things you have going for you
thank
too, so you don't feel bad about not having water.
They don't just roll off your tongue?
They do, but they're private. I don't want people on air to hear them.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah, because you're so private.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Oh. I guess I could go to Greg's house. I should actually call Greg right now. That's a really good point. That is a really good point. All right, I'm gonna do that. He always offers me to stay at his house. That's a fuck. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Thank you, Vindicate. Get your CEO shirts now at Vindicate, VNDK8.com. That's a really good. Daddy, help me. Yes. That is a really good sign. Let's troubleshoot the well pump live. Wow. You mean just like take go live on Instagram and just go over there and see if people can help me? That would be fascinating. No, I don't need to shower there. I took the family over to my mom's house yesterday. My mom lives right down the road. Only one person in my family didn't shower over there. Guess who that was? I haven't showered in 3 days. I did wipe my butt with a like 10 wet ones this morning. And my mom's cool. It's fun going over there. I always like going over there, especially like if I can just like chill. What is today? Do I have a podcast tonight or anything? Oh, there's the Dave Castro Weekend Review probably. Bob Forrest. Oh shit. I have a meeting. I have meetings today. Oh, interesting. Wow. All right. I got to go. I'm stressing myself out being on here. I'll talk to you guys later. I'll probably see you guys later on this afternoon. I'll schedule a show. All right. Talk to you soon. Love you guys. Bye, Eric. Bye, Mike. Bye, Judy. Bye, Daniel. Bye, Corey. Bye, Ken.